All right, I'm about to. Let me see. We're doing a little technical difficulties, but it's cool. All right, so everyone who's watching this, what I'm doing now, I had to restart this whole thing, but we're about to get into some the new link, which I'm about to post on Twitter. I'm posting it on Twitter now. And all right. We're up. Now I'm going to invite Xylon in here. And we're almost good. We are almost good. This is going to be a good conversation, folks. Do not doubt. Do not doubt me. We were already getting into some great stuff, too. But, nice. All right. We got Zach here. Got Aniket. And, all right, I'm going to do some here.
It's good, baby.
There you are. What's up? Let me get my
perfect.
Good...
I got coffee.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, actually, yeah, I got my iced coffee here too. I'm gonna make sure my audio is going through the right one. Good, right? Everything's cool. All right, yeah, we got Commodity Fetish. The chat was working on the last stream. Oh, weird. There's a lot to dissect with this band. Nice. All right. So people are hyped. Okay, but now see, we got to do more preamble and stuff for the folks to trickle back in.
And, so now I don't have to explain what wig means.
Yeah.
For the public record. Do you want me to go in?
Here, wait. I'm gonna technical difficulties.
You're fine. Got my little notes.
Yeah, I really do. I know this. I always say we're gonna let people trickle in. We're gonna let people trickle in, but that is the way to go. Yeah, we were just getting on like dorked out like culture war shit, and then we kind of just like restrained ourselves from going too deep about like
you don't restrain yourself. You restrain yourself and then bait me in. Like the other day in the Discord was way like I was just like, God damn it, Charlie! Like
what for which thing? The thing about gender?
You've got the gender stuff.
Maybe I shouldn't have said please.
No, and you're fine. It's just you want it. You want. I understand the people want to know what I think. I get it.
Well, yeah, because you have like takes that are like actually interesting. I mean, it's like this. And I'm just tired. Like, if there can be like talk about culture and quote unquote politics and stuff without it just being like, why is everyone so PC? Cancel culture sucks. Or let's fight the power and do justice. It's like if there's anything that's a little bit new, like.
Well, that's the thing with all of it is just like, and that's what I was trying to say earlier is that like I wish people would just like go a little bit deeper. Like people should be like, I mean, fuck prayer. Like you should be like sitting in bed for 15 minutes before you go to sleep, being like, what is the value system that brings me to believe what I think? And like that's just like daily, like straight up, like why am I placing value on this over that, whatever else? It's like, and it especially gets weirder as you get older and more things collapsing on themselves, which I think is like kind of a useful thing to talk about with my chem. Even is just like specific, just like sort of like dichotomies of like underground versus mainstream shit, and like the perch from which any one sort of like purveyor of culture sits and says, oh, like I'll go this far and no further. This stuff is cool to me, but not that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, as like more shit just piles on top of each other, it gets harder to be like, oh, right. Like this is true, like unequivocally true. Like this thing is cool and that thing isn't. why again, I don't know, but like definitely I remember that it was cool, so it's cool.
Well, I mean, some stuff. I mean, it like reminds me of just like music opinions in high school or middle school, where you're like, "This sucks," instead of being like, "I don't like this." It's such a basic
Mm.
maturity level thing. But when I was a kid, I never said I don't like this. It was always like, "This sucks" or "This doesn't suck." And you've got adults who have like opinions about the world where I'm like, is this really your belief system, or is it just like you're a certain type of person and you have a certain type of personality and you're
When
being
I think
like,
it's,
you know,
I think you'd also just like I use this analogy a lot for like cultural stuff to like personal growth stuff, but um you're not supposed to like trade, say like you're out of sour cream and you were just using a spoon to like spoon some out. You're not supposed to put that like just used spoon into the new sour cream container,
mm,
because the cultures from the old sour cream will commingle and then make that whole new sour cream the age of the previous sour cream.
interesting. Okay.
And that
Okay.
is like consistently a thing that we encounter with like culture, like meeting that guy in college or whatever it is, where it's like you like get this little stuff that like brings you into like a new substrate, and like that's now how you're thinking. And like this is what's bad, like truly, when people are like, oh, like things are bad about the internet. Most of what's bad about the internet is that like everyone who thinks, you know, all 8 different opinions that you're allowed to have or whatever talks the same way,
Right.
because they're like all on Twitter. They all like formulate their thoughts like a tweet,
Yeah.
which is not good. It's
Neuro.
not bad because of brevity. It's bad because like they're not thinking. Um, and so like I deal with it a lot where I'm just like, oh, right, like maybe that this sucks period. You just have to like, I feel a lot of things, you know, and I've fallen on the sword quite a few times in lots of areas for this, but like a lot of what I think comes from just like doing that shit earlier,
Mm.
like being forced into those positions by just like maybe having parents that were slightly countercultural or whatever, where it's just like I started a little bit earlier.
Well, yeah,
So
I'd say
like,
more than kind of counterculture. I mean,
yeah,
you
for
are
sure.
literally named Xylon. Like, I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
and like and the Genesis thing's a big one, but it's like funny too
huge.
because like I have like, you know, with like any of the social justice shit, it's really funny like moving back to my hometown, and I have friends that I care about dearly. We're also like 40 years old,
Yeah.
and they remember me from my Tumblr days, telling them all of their opinions now, and they remember I remember them being like, no, 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 this is wrong. You're just like a weird ass little kid. And then CNN started saying all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like over it. But now I have like people who are 20 years older than me who've lived full lives who are just like telling me stuff, and they're like, no, 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 you don't understand. White privilege is this. And I'm like, bro, I like 8 to 12 years ago, I was telling you this.
Right.
I'm
Right.
not
Right. Right.
unaware of the argument. Like
Yeah.
I was out there on the front lines telling people
Yeah. You move
to
past
be
some stuff.
pause. Like
You like.
that's like truly, I
Yeah.
was one of the first people to start bludgeoning people over like I just like punished people with like social justice shit. Um
That's cool. I mean, I've moved past.
yeah,
I mean, it's, I
you
don't
move
want it
on.
now, but that's cool that you were on
It's
this.
literal like it's literal dialectics. Like it's just straight up like you move forward
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
And it's also what's helpful is to remember that like I'm probably gonna think that this sucks later. Like that me right now sucks. Like
yeah.
that's, but it's also like, what would I want to do? Would I want to be like stoked about this right now in 5 years and like stagnate? No.
Well, man, see, this is a thing though when it comes to. I mean, it has a political or social implication, but I just think about it with music as far as the staying in a lane vibe. But
Sure.
just this idea of progress, man. I keep coming back to this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
do I like it or not? Is it legit? Is it based or cringe? What is like progress? Because I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like there's
Yeah.
this thing of like, yeah, do I want to stagnate? Isn't it exciting that I would think that my opinions now are whack? You know, in 10 years, I think they're whack, or like in 10 years, I think my music now sucks. Like, that's exciting, but at the same time, there's something also deep about like, why can't we just figure out the way things are and just do that? Like,
But
you
I
know what I
think
mean?
part of like, but that's the thing is like, that's where part of my process of things is it's not like a, oh, like I fucking hate myself, I hate who I was sort of thing. Like I understand why I was the way I was on Tumblr or whatever. Like I'm not trying to throw that out. I'm just trying to be like, oh right, like, and I didn't quite understand then what I do now, which
Yeah.
does just take time. It is like actually part of what I really like about My Chemical Romance is that the more I get older, while it is not what I truly would like imagine people of the same age that I know making,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like kid shit the way that I thought it would when I would get older. I thought it would feel like weird, kind of, just like really kind of like cringe.
Yeah.
And there's stuff for sure,
Well,
but it doesn't.
yeah.
It ages weirdly well for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly that age for My Chemical Romance. I mean, like, right? Because like when that, well, the first record came out what 2002, and
Too.
then the one we're talking about, or that I kind of insisted we talk about, is 2004.
Yeah,
So you're what 17 then, or something like that?
2004.
Or no, you're like 5. Or what are
I'm
you?
10 in
You're,
2004.
you're 10 in 2004. Okay, right
Yeah,
on, right
so I'm 27 now. Yeah, and so okay, so like going through what you had asked me earlier, you're right to say that like the first time we hung out, and we talked about this on the last stream. The first time we hung out, I mentioned scrams to you.
Yes.
I'm like, oh yeah, scrams, and you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And I think that like emo, just like emo, the thing took up a solid 10 years of my life. And there's straggler stuff that I still care about, but really just like a very huge focus of my life. My mom gets me All Killer No Filler because she, as someone who's into like heavier shit or whatever, wants me to have like CDs of my own, which is very confusing also because like my mom has a weird taste thing where like whatever's in front of her is good. But I was like listening and dancing to like The Prodigy and Ministry and Throbbing Gristle as a kid. But also my mom wants me to like, weirdly, she isn't like, oh, this Sum 41 record sucks ass. She's like, this is good for you.
Right,
This
right,
will
right.
be good for you.
Well, it's almost like trying to make you be a normal, like rebellious, but like
Yeah.
age appropriately rebel or whatever.
We're
Like
talking, talking about that substrate thing too. It's like I think I couldn't process this correctly when I was younger, but there's like standard sorts of rebellion that I think she was also just like participating in as a person, but like definitely bringing me into at a very early level that I think at the time, maybe around here, growing up in Greensboro, definitely did set me apart, but also just like kind of initiated me into like the normal human process of being a person.
Yeah.
And so like I got like an asymmetrical haircut really early on and shit like that. Like I had a devil lock from like 10 years old to 18. No shit.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard now to be like, oh right, like that's where I was, but that's it.
Is your mom like mad young or like what's the vibe?
Yeah, my mom was born in 1971.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, my parents both had me at like 23 and 24. They're just, they're a little bit
That's
young.
not crazy though,
And yeah, it's not insane, but they definitely, I mean, they were culturally, my dad was like seeing Black Flag in town here in the 80s and like getting into shit like that. And then just my mom went away from like evangelical, like living in Lynchburg, Virginia. And she was like, oh, right, I liked metal, I'll like whatever.
Yeah.
So I get into like kind of this like wigged out like skate shit where it was just like, and I remember very early on like being a kid who would be like this, but not that. Like I remember like hating Bowling for Soup. And
ska?
like
That's like ska punk or what is
no, it's just like it's other shit that was just in this kind of like weird commercial pop punk realm.
Yeah.
Like post Victory Records, but pre like Fueled by Ramen shit or whatever.
Whoa, Victory, because Victory in my I knew Victory as like tough, like that was like a tough
Victory was, but there was like all of that. So like you would have like Florida shit where you'd have like these tough hardcore guys also hanging out with like I don't know like speaking of ska, like I was really into like the Lawrence Arms, which was like ska, like pop punk shit. Yeah. My favorite Victory shit is that Judd band actually did a 7-inch on
Judd. I didn't know.
Yeah, which is super tight.
That's like a joke band, right? Or
That's the
yeah.
acapella shit.
Yeah,
And then one of the dudes went in, he played an ass suck later, which rules.
Legit. I always fuck with. I mean, it was all about what's that band? Dead Guy.
Yeah.
I mean that was like my
Yeah.
mind blower. You know, that was Victory, right? That and
I
like
think
Bloodlet and shit.
Yeah. And so like I would just like get skate magazines and like learn about like shitty pop punk bands, and I would go to the skate park like constantly. And so I'm 8, 9 years old, just going to the skate park whenever my mom would let me. And I remember being like really stoked because like they would play like Skinny Puppy sometimes, which was just like, once again, kind of like weird, like stuff I associated with my mom. I was like, oh, this is my mom's music. Right. Yeah. I know.
No, I mean, it's like literally like Brahms in my house.
Yeah.
Like actual Brahms. Like zero irony. Like not like it's good for you, but just on some like it's Sunday, we're listening to Brahms. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm then in this other, and then so like I'm going to skate parks and I hear probably Helena for the first time at a skate park.
So
and I'm just
good, dude.
And I'm like, this is so sick.
It's a
this
beautiful
is just so sick.
Fucking song.
And like I remember being that kind of kid where I would just like run up and like bring my skateboard and like I would be like, what are we hearing? Right.
Well, that was the shit, man. Dude, that was, I missed that. I don't want to get too old, guy, man, but like you do remember like this thing where getting into something to find out about something, you had to literally talk to cool older kids like face to face and shit. And it's like, I remember, dude, you know what I remember with emo? The first time I heard the word emo, I heard the cool older like skater kids at school saying it, and I was like, what is that? And they wouldn't tell me. They were just like they were like, oh, don't worry about it. And I was like, no, what is that? It's like that Radiohead band, right? With the creep, with the, and they were like, not really. I was like, motherfucker, like what do you know, like how do I ingratiate myself in these people? But I was like, Fugazi, I fuck with Fugazi, Rites of Spring. They're like, okay, now we can tell you, Yeah.
That's really funny. So like I just being like autistic and kind of like super online and whatever, I would like then turn any of my interests in this stuff into like a full-time job of like I had to like there was a real amount of time where you get into this stuff and I'm literally in 2006 I'm in middle school when Black Parade comes out, so I'm already like lightly into my chem just from like hearing them around. I like 3 Cheers, but I don't even think I have it on CD until Black Parade comes out.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing this word get associated with like, and I'm sure you witnessed this in a separate sense, even though you would have been too young for goth to like pop off. Yeah. But like the mall goth thing becomes the entirety of what goth is on a like city to city, town to town level.
Yeah.
Goth,
no,
you can be like, oh, the real shit. It doesn't matter what the real shit is. Goths are kids in your town. Who listen to Evanescence. Yeah. That's not like, it doesn't matter what the real shit is. So emo becomes like very big like that. I'm in like late elementary school, early middle school. And it's like, there are kids who are emos.
Yeah.
They are
a type of kid. Yeah.
And it's like, like the cutting shit starts getting out of hand. I knew a lot of I dated a lot of girls. I knew a lot of people who would cut. I myself was like institutionalized for like 9 days when I was in 6th grade and stuff.
Oh, man.
So like, just like you get, which part of that feels like a meme now. Like in hindsight, you're just kind of like, oh, right. Like that's like kids are like, oh, right. Like this is the experience of being alive is weird. And then you also hear that this is the way to handle it.
But like, yeah, I mean, were kids doing that in fucking like Renaissance, like Italy and shit?
That's what I'm saying. That's where it feels like a meme, where it's like you're given a glass to fill the liquid into, where it's like for someone else, it's like probably they just handled it a different way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when you get told like, yeah, you're a teenager, you're gonna be depressed, don't cut yourself, and you're like, maybe I should cut.
You just literally like laid out all of the options. And I like. No, so I'm like into this shit and it definitely affects like how I dress or whatever else. And I have the double lock, but like the biggest bands for me in middle school then become like My Chem and Fall Out Boy. I'm a huge like Fall Out Boy person at this time, which like now processing it backwards kind of rules, because like both of them have this like extra theatrical element that isn't in even dress or whatever, but it comes down to like them like really caring about singing.
Well, that's
Where
something,
other like
yeah.
emo bands did not, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what's so interesting with My Chemical Romance. Why I got into like when that shit, when I first heard about it, I was like, this is just, well, no, at first I was like, okay, this is like just a cheesy version of the real shit. This is, how emo has fallen. Like,
Sure.
we knew the real thing. This is poser shit. Then I actually started hearing it once the second record came out, because I was teaching guitar
Yeah.
to kids who were actually older than you. These kids
Yeah.
would be like in their early 30s now, but
Of
I was
course.
teaching guitar, and they wanted to learn these songs, and I was like, this is for kids, and it's super wholesome, and
Yeah.
it's great songs, and it reminds me of like Queen, kind of.
It
And
definitely, I mean, by Black Parade, they have a huge, like, that's an arena rock band.
yeah.
And there's lots of things to kind of like trace out with it. But like, there's a literal meme that you get to watch like other people go through, like as the internet gets more connected and stuff. There was an experience that I had at a certain age, and maybe there were like, people were going through this at an older age, surely, whatever. But I watched people my own age, like state by state, start to piece together like a real history of emo or whatever.
That's
You
cool.
find out that it goes back to Embrace of Right and Rites of Spring. You get into One Last Wish. You get into like Moss Icon, which is my favorite shit from that.
Yeah,
Big.
dude,
I mean, these were almost Moss Icon. Had I been like 3 years younger when I got it, I would have just been like, but I can't. I didn't get Moss Icon knuckle tattoos for the same reason that like I probably wouldn't imagine myself doing this right now, which is like to explain emo to any normal person feels ridiculous.
No, it really does.
And
yeah,
so like, and there's the copy pasta, right? There's the real emo consists of
right.
And at this point in my life, like I kind of take this weird thing with it of just being like, real emo consists of Scrams and then My Chemical Romance.
That's
like kind of like those two things and not anything else. Like Midwest emo and Sunny Day Real Estate and Get Up Kids, I like all that stuff, but like that can go.
Yeah, no,
Jazz can go.
I was never into the sparkly, jangly like Midwest style. I was into like the like heroin and like that kind of like, that's Scrams, right? I mean, really, and like and like like Orchid, Jerome's Dream. I mean, those were it's like emo violence or emo core.
Yeah,
like,
that happens, right? Like you get the words emo violence, like the best screamo band of the last like 10 years. And they're recording again still, is my friend Gus's band, Ostraka, from Richmond. And it's like very rare that I want to like go see something like that in a room with people who want to do stuff like that. But like, this is my experience, is like, by the time I get to see My Chemical Romance in 2010, I'm seeing My Chemical Romance in Thursday, which was like a huge thing for me being 16. But also I saw Page 99 that same year perform all of Document 8. So like that's like
they got back together.
They did it just to do Document 8. And it was like perfect. It was amazing. It was so sick. And it's like the same year I'm seeing like those two things. And for me, that's real emo. Like there's the prescriptive version of emo that I've just come back around on, of like, this isn't like false. This is everyone's idea of emo. Like if you ask like a normal person what emo is, they would be like, oh, like, My Chemical Romance.
Yeah, well, this
or like
words change what they mean. That's why you got the retronym Scrams. It became necessary.
And the screamo shit's weird too, because like the screamo problem becomes its own thing, in which like there's this subset of things within like I call that shit like mallcore or whatever.
Like Attack or something.
Yeah, exactly.
The crab vibes.
The crab
and shit.
Yeah. So that stuff is all like one kind of problem. And then metalcore had that same issue, where
Yeah,
you get
well,
like
yeah.
these metalcore bands that aren't metalcore bands. And I think the metalcore thing is really interesting because I'm like a big Rorschach, Starkweather.
Bro,
Um,
Rorschach was like, that was
yeah,
big point of definition in the sort of tri-state area,
and
90s, you
that's
know.
and that's what like that's ultimately kind of what we have to talk about is like Rorschach and Starkweather are like these big like kind of precursors for like a half of the sound for Ink and Dagger.
Right, right,
And then
right.
but then Ink and Dagger has this other thing, this
Well,
other like kind of like Nation of Ulysses thing. It
yep,
has this
yep.
weird that would then go on to kind of get eked out into like what they call sass now, which is like I really love Blood Brothers.
Yeah,
Like I
not
love
huge for me, but
no,
I
I
like
understand.
I
Like
appreciate it. Well, this is, who did I say this around? I said something about white belts. You know, I was
oh,
just like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't have, they don't wear the white belts, and this person was like, I don't. They were your age. They were like, I don't. What is a white belt?
yeah.
Like, man, you know, you weren't there. I didn't wear one, but like Orchid, man, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
Locust, man, they had this like that. It's interesting to
Oh
me
yeah.
how shit gets tough and then sensitive and then tough again. Like if you get like, I don't know, like Rites of Spring and that kind of shit, or like Heroin, that Gravity
Yeah.
Records. It's emo, but it's screamo, so there's a tough element. Then that Midwestern stuff becomes wussier, and then if that turns into like My Chem Row and all that shit, and then that turns into metalcore, then
Well,
that
so
like,
like I
or
mean,
sort of, it's like
one
becomes
like
tough again. Like,
yeah, one of like my favorite metalcore band is like Botch. Like
oh
I'm
yeah,
like a huge fan of Botch.
big time.
Um,
Yeah,
and there's like there's this weird shit where like I mean Ink and Dagger is the big one, right? Like Ink and Dagger, there's a lot of Jersey shit.
yeah,
Um, the Jersey thing is a huge one. The New Brunswick thing is huge. I'd say Ink and Dagger and Thursday have like the
yeah.
most DNA and just like even just into My Chemical Romance
That's
existing.
yeah, they I mean, I think in a lot of ways My Chemical Romance was like, I mean, not ripping off Ink and Dagger, but kind of, that was like their secret weapon of like, there's this band that like low
Yeah,
key, because that I mean, actually, you know, I didn't even really get into them until I've been hanging and playing a little with Don DeVore, who was in Ink and Dagger.
I
And
love the Icarus line as well.
Icarus
And
Line's cool. And you know, he
well,
has a band. Have you heard Collapsing Scenery, by the way? This is like
no,
name dropping shit. It's just like
no.
Don's band here with Mickey, the bass player from Maroon 5. So it's
Oh
like,
shit,
it's weird
weird.
post punk shit. It's cool. Like
Huh.
Mickey's into some shit.
I'm
Then
like I'm into, and then like I think Don was also in the Frail. In
yes.
Frail, yeah.
That was his first band. Yeah.
And Frail, like I mean, that's the sound that then also carries
Yeah.
over. I think like the Ink and Dagger stuff is cool because you hear it. There's that like the chick vocals and stuff like that where it's like a little bit more theatrical and you have the girl coming in sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally My Chemical Romance perfects that on Mama with Liza Minnelli
What?
on the Black Parade.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
song where Liza Minnelli comes in and is like, yeah,
That is fucking,
wild.
dude. I forgot about that because I didn't listen to all of Black
Sure.
Parade when I
No,
brushed
of
up on
course.
this. I only listened to like the big tracks and shit. That's so bonkers, man. I mean,
Yeah.
as far as
Super.
like fucking, it seems like, yeah, Ink and Dagger, and then is like precursors. Like, yeah, okay, so like being into hardcore in high school in the '90s, hardcore and goth were like completely separate. I mean,
Yeah,
that
of
was like
course.
just, I mean, they weren't like, if you knew about shit, but like in my experience, it was like hardcore is unsentimental, unromantic, tough, varying degrees of tough,
Sure.
you know, not arty. And then you get like, and then goth stuff was like really kind of considered cheesy. Like when in the
Sure.
'90s, like it was not,
Yeah.
there was no goth revival. It was just like, I mean,
When
we'd
like
go to goth nights at some of the clubs because we could sneak in and try to get with the girls and stuff. But yeah, like the music we weren't. But then it's like, yeah, Ink and Dagger, and then Antioch Arrow would be another
oh,
one, right?
love
Where
that
the
shit so
goth, where
much.
the vampire shit mixes with the hardcore, you
No,
know.
definitely. And I think that that's like I mean that's a huge thing for me. I'm a big fan of Antioch Arrow. The vampire shit is like super real. The vampire shit's there in Page 99. Like
Yeah.
In Love with an Apparition is like big vampire jams. I love that fucking Vampires Will Never Hurt You is so clearly like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer song.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So fucked up.
Yeah.
And that's like I mean, and we can talk about Gerard being like this kind of he's really prescient for the last 20 years of just like being the kind of guy who's like definitely speaking the language that like I think all normies speak now. And like in being able to communicate in that sort of like very media centric, like being like a Joss Whedon guy, being like a light kind of comic book guy, I think communicates in a language that now like everyone does. But when I was a kid, like I was still getting like shoved around and called a nerd in like 2003. Like I was still
the
like, it was
comic
weird
book.
that I hung out at the comic book store.
Yeah. No, totally. This nerd, like nerds, but you fuck, but you know, you're sensitive, but you're actually getting girls from it, kind of. And
I'm not okay video.
Yes,
where it's like,
absolutely.
you know, you're into D&D Fangoria, you're never gonna make it.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
Yeah,
like now it's just like, what is that? Like literally it's so impossible for like a Zoomer that My Chemical Romance is their Nirvana or whatever. Like for a Zoomer who's just like, oh, like, I don't know, like that doesn't seem like a real time that existed. Where you could be like, I'm into D&D, that makes me weird.
Yeah. I mean, well, what's interesting, I was thinking about just like the zeitgeist shit at the time. It's funny how apolitical. I mean, it's not weird that a big rock band would be apolitical, but like I was noticing, I was like, that record, Three Cheers, that came out the same year as American Idiot. You know, and like that was like the sort of like, you know, anti-Bush whatever.
Yeah.
It's also,
which I hated at the time, like straight up, like as a kid was like, and I was just like, it's that normal shit of like, this sucks. Like I was like, Dookie's better.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm like
but but fucking but what's it called? But if you compare I mean, American Idiot and Three Cheers, I mean, they're both like Broadway albums. I mean, both of those, but even before Liza Minnelli is on the next record. I mean, it's
right, and that's where it starts, man. On this one, on like Three Cheers, it starts with the kind of like, I call it like carnival barker shit, where it's like, and this is a big thing where like there's like the dark aesthetics for the first three records, and it's a big thing that they're doing. I like Bullets is still probably my favorite My Chemical Romance record, but they don't have it yet. They don't have that thing. There's like acoustic guitar and there's like actual weird stuff happening on Bullets, but that shit's not there yet. And what's really interesting to me is that like, and we can talk about like the crew thing later, but like literally talking about like the kind of more metallic elements of Ink and Dagger or whatever else, there's something that My Chem has picked up on in being like a, not by any metric, like a metal band, but like by being a slightly metallic band, where I think they carry some of the like narrative shit that punk just is garbage at, like truly shitty at, you know? Like you hear like, you hear American Idiot and it's just like, this is just like the shittiest world version of like Bedtime for Democracy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this is, you can't do it this way.
No, totally. Yeah,
but
on Bullets, there are some, like little bit of, it's even with that first track or two, that some of that shit almost sounds like Swedish death metal a little bit. Like there's like a little, like, or like not as fast, but like some like some of that melodic, well,
I mean, like
Dismember or something a little bit.
That's the Crew thing too, where like Motley Crue is like almost like a slow speed metal band. Like they're not fast, but they're kind of fast. You know, like, and they're playing like they're that kind of band, but they're not really. And totally. It is like, I do think of like Shout at the Devil a lot when I think of My Chemical Romance.
Interesting. Okay.
But like, there's that like interlude track or whatever. God Bless the Children of the Beast, and I'm just like, this is super My Chem. Like,
yes, it is. Yes,
it is. Like,
it's so much less self-aware though. Like, I mean, the Crew is like, it's punk because it's like actually like kind of retarded and shit. Like,
no, of course,
like,
you know? I mean, they're not. But I think that everything is less self-aware at that moment because like no one's mediated yet.
That
like you're just like you're experiencing culture in like real time as a person. But no one thinking of like even just the aesthetics, the kind of like carnival shit that hits into Black Parade or whatever. You get that hidden track on Black Parade where it's like blood, gallons of the stuff, that shit. It's like this was a real moment, like going from Evanescence into shit that was like kind of trying to even posture itself as like maybe cooler or less mainstream than My Chemical Romance. you had bands like World Inferno, Friendship Society, who are just like
really,
ska and like all this weird shit, and they like care about like like the Fritz Lang movie and shit. And it's like this is aged so poorly, but they're like thinking of themselves as like maybe like elevated and like more real. Similarly, a band like Dresden Dolls that has like very much like similar sorts of like creeping carnival bullshit, this like dark cabaret shit, and it's like, and you're not, there's no lasting power to this. But like my chem's just like actually like truly large. They're like,
I think like the shit that gets going with like the Broadway element, it's like it's not just like the way he's singing or whatever. It's that like that the songwriting has that mannered, like, okay, it might not be self-aware in the sense of like memed out like mediated shit, but it's self-aware in the sense of like very craft, like we're just the rhyming, like the couplets are all like, and it rains and it pours and it's down on the floor, and you know, it's just like it's like skilled shit. It's like Sondheim shit, whereas like that first listening to Bullets, it's like skilled, but it doesn't have that.
They're a band that plays in basements. Like they do.
It does.
They straight up are
sound like that. It does sound like that. You know.
I think that that's super real, and I think that that's an interesting thing about that jump in quality. Like 3 Cheers is, to me, the most quintessential My Chemical Romance record, because I like I like Black Parade the least.
That's like their melancholy.
It has like some incredible guts. Like I think it's like actually very good, and it's like on a like kind of chain of progress. It's doing this really big, cool thing, but you just have like a massive stinker like Teenagers that makes it impossible for me to like.
Just the song Teenagers.
Oh, fuck that song, man! Like straight up, like. It sounds like Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini.
It's not a great song.
It sucks so bad. It's in the middle of like an otherwise very competent record. And this is, I mean, 3 Cheers happens to be just like by a hair, their shortest. It's very, very tight. Yeah. It ends as quickly as it comes in. And it's just like there's nothing skippable or remotely weird about it. It's just sort of like really where it is, and it sounds the most like them. Like I would want someone to think of My Chem as Helena.
Right. Absolutely.
You know,
yeah. It's kind of like listening back to that record. It's very like I just keep trying to pull out strands of like what feels mannered versus what feels like urgent. You know, and like what feels. I mean, saying real emo is not like we're already past that, obviously. But just like stuff that really is like, feels like it's coming from personal experience, and what feels like it isn't. You know, and just the fact that like, you know, it's like a lot of this stuff. It's like storytelling that it's not even supposed to sound like it's coming from real life. But then there's stuff where he's like, you know, where he's singing about like suicide and stuff, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that does have a feeling of like it's real or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, I was really into them and Fall Out Boy at the same time. And Fall Out Boy has this like other kind of like weird, very singy element where like they're very interested in like Motown and like a lot of black music. And like just like I feel like mid-century R&B shit. And I think that there's this weird thing of like trying to understand that you just like have room here to make like another kind of music. Like you have room to like, oh, we're popular, and that means that we could make like a ballad. And they're not a band on Bullets that like even remotely can like think about making a ballad, but like 3 Cheers, they start thinking about it. And then you have it for real. Like a song like I Don't Love You on Black Parade, where it's just like, this is gorgeous.
And there's like not their first, it couldn't be anyone's first record actually.
Like, exactly. It's like, and it's like, so the like solo on that is so good. And like, I'm really amazed at like what a guitar band this band is. Ray, the lead guitarist, is like very good.
Yeah,
Like
they've got
truly good.
harmonized. They've got like a harmonized solo on like one of those tracks in the middle, like a like a breakdown. It's like sounds like
Yeah.
Boston for a second, or Queen. Queen. I mean,
Nice. Okay.
more Queen. More Queen.
Sure.
I think. Yeah, I mean, Gerard Way is kind of an amazing vocalist. I mean, just on the level of like, I feel like the shit that came after, like the kind of like attack, or like the stuff that kind of like when it became like scene core or whatever,
Yeah.
it kind of split into like, oh, there's like the clean vocals and then there's the harsh vocals for the whatever. But it's like, Way actually had where it's like both harsh and melodic
Well,
the whole
there's
time. It's like
so like on Bullets,
snarling.
there's this like Bullets thing where like the lore around that record is that he has like an abscess in his mouth while he has to record and everything.
Oh, wow.
And he had like medical shit going on with his mouth,
Mm.
and he still just like records it or whatever. But I've always kind of thought of it like he's just like taking that with him everywhere he goes, where he's like, well, that worked. And so like I've got to like keep that in my mouth, like, but then he's really, I mean, and this is a question for me all the time with stuff of just like how do you, in the 2 years, like you and I, like we just both lived through the last 2 years of our life. It's not a lot of time. How do you sit back and go like, oh, right, like we signed to what is it, like Reprise or whatever? Yeah. And it's like we've signed to like the label that Frank Sinatra started.
Yeah.
Let's get better. And then you just like give yourself the 2 years to not only like tour, play, whatever else, but also to like become a better type of musician than you were before. I'm like really fascinated by like, even if it's just like self-mythologizing bullshit of Gerard Way being like, yeah, I was mostly like trying to like pitch things to like Cartoon Network and trying to be like an animator and a comic guy. Yeah. And then I just decided that I saw like the towers fall and I was like, oh, I should probably like go do something else.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised he doesn't, or maybe he does. I mean, actually, is he the principal songwriter? No, it's like a collective effort. I mean, I don't even really know.
I would imagine it's him and Ray because they don't ever really have a long-term drummer.
Right.
Mikey can barely, he's really playing bass sometimes, but he's also like kind of a guy who couldn't when they started.
Yeah. He's like just a punk guy. Because I mean, as far as like songwriting wise, I mean, just like on the tip of it being Broadway vibes. I mean, even aside from like literally Broadway, I mean, I feel like that dude could be writing songs for other artists. Maybe he doesn't need to because just the money. He's just money.
I mean, he seems like he's got the money, and then he does like his comic shit or whatever, and like he has a book that got turned into a Netflix show.
Where it's he doesn't need to, but I mean, I feel like it's the kind of songwriting that doesn't need to be that band. Like, it's that's what I mean by the craft,
Definitely. And like
the
other guy,
tight couplets and fucking, I don't know how music theory dorked out you are, but like there's like passing diminished chords, secondary dominant, you don't know technically what I'm talking about, but you know by ear what I'm talking about. These little things where it's like you're turning a little corner harmonically. It's like music school shit. Not that they went to music school, but it's like that professional songwriting.
But I don't know. Like, I think that's part of it too, is like being like once again, a kind of like mediated band of like, I've heard a lot of music.
Yeah.
And maybe the people who are making music that I listened to didn't. And that's just true. Like, I mean, like truly, like people like quibble about this with Crew, where it's like, oh, like glam metal starts like here. And it's like, yeah, but like, even if it did, like, when would they have heard it? Like, they're in a record writing process, and they're just making music that they're into.
Yeah.
Like, My Chemical Romance is a band that's like heard a lot of music and is like listening to a lot of music, and it's freely available to them. And they're trying to make sure that they can like learn stuff. And I think that can just be like a very intuitive thing. Frank, the rhythm guitarist, he was in a band I like called Pensy Prep before that was also on Eyeball Records, the same label that Bullets came out on.
Yeah.
And then he did like a more harsh, almost kind of Scrams band alongside My Chemical Romance called Leathermouth, which was fine. Yeah. But I'm always like, I mean, Gerard tried a solo record after they broke up, and I'm really interested in some of the melodic stuff that they do on their final record, which is like the bright, like emo shit they do, where it's like straight up just not, it's not the other shit at all.
Yeah.
But there's also like all this power pop shit on it, and they kind of sound like the Stooges sometimes, and it's tight to me. But
power pop is like probably a touchstone for the whole thing to some extent. I mean,
definitely,
it's not as bright sounding, but it's, I mean, it's power.
Well,
pop.
sometimes I get like this Murder City Devils thing. Sometimes
that band, it took me a second to realize that they're not cringe and actually sick.
Fire,
Total fire.
Amazing, man. And then I was like, I mean, and they're also just like, I think Gerard really, really likes a type of music. I mean, talking about your boy and the Icarus line. What is that? Black Lives at the Golden Coast.
Is that Icarus Line?
That's an Icarus Line record. It's just like, it's a really good Icarus Line record, but it's like sounds like glam and shit.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, it sounds like Bolin.
Yeah.
And it's like, it sounds like Bolin in like a noise rock band. And there's a lot of that for me where I'm just like, oh, like these dudes like T-Rex. These dudes like really like, that's cool to me.
That might be why they kind of got their hooks in me as an adult, because Bolin is like, I mean, he's been a touchstone for me, like just on every fucking level, since late teens, early 20s. So I guess maybe like, I picked up on that with my.
Have you ever heard the Daryl Hall solo record, Sacred Songs?
No.
It's produced by Robert Fripp, and it's all about his relationship to magic. It's amazing. Like, it's so sick. It's really cool.
Is it similarly glammy? I mean, is it?
It's got like this weird kind of like produced. It's got this like produced solo guy thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's got that Fripp emo touch of just like, oh, like we're gonna make you into a person that you might not even be capable of being yourself, which I love that shit.
Oh shit, Senum knows Sacred Songs. Tight. He's like, nice. The Oracle. I'm a little bit looking in the comments. The Oracle says that Gerard. Well, you can see this. You're watching the comments, right?
I'm not.
Oh, yeah. The Oracle says that Gerard Way knows about black metal, posted some atmospheric black metal, which is that I would not necessarily have thought. Like, that's like not a shock, but something of a surprise. Definitely.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that like that's a thing that I love on Bullets. It's a thing that I love on Three Cheers. Is they've got this like swirling thing that I think is like them being interested in Ink and Dagger, but I think it touches this other sort of like just like ambient sort of like spatial shit of like a lot of stereo play and a lot of real interplay of just like sounds kind of like moving around each other. And like a lot of the whisper shit, like I like that shit a lot. Love that stuff.
That's the thing that really sets him apart from like so many of these other singers is like just like range. He's doing the whisper. There's the croaky. I mean, it's corny, but it's that Deftones croaky kind of vibe. I thought that was corny at the time, but it's kind of sick in retrospect. No. It is kind of emotional, and then the full-on belting. He's got this, he has real chops.
Well, and that's another thing that I like have, a real problem with coming from and existing in primarily like experimental music now, in a sense that like, you and I both exist in like experimental music, but like I probably am dealing with stuff that very often gets called music a lot less. You know what I mean?
You mean just noise? You mean just on the level?
Yeah, noise, or like, like even just people who are like, like your friend Kristen, like existed more in my world before it was like a Profound Lore thing, right?
Yeah.
There's this other shit of just like, oh, like, and that's maybe kind of what I'm talking about, is there's a lot of people in my world where they're like, I think that they're not admitting to themselves that they'd love to be My Chemical Romance, not in some sort of like, oh, like I'd love the money or I'd love the popularity way, but like straight up in the like, I am pretending that I'm not trying to get like a real emotional reaction out of someone.
Yeah, but you want to,
and then I'm relegating myself to like kind of like an area I can win. Because what I love about My Chemical Romance is that like they are winning at something that like you're allowed to be like is cringe.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
also is like truly like you can just go in any of that shit. You can go on any of those videos on YouTube, and it's like a million potentially truly deranged, potentially like extremely cringe individuals being like, I have not committed suicide because of this,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is
I mean,
crazy.
that's the thing, dude. How
But it
much
is like,
noise? I mean, dude, how much noise music has actually done that? Who listened to Burned Mind and like put the razor down? You know what I mean? It's
of
like, I mean,
course. And it's like
great
that.
record, but you know, whatever.
No, for sure. But like, I have that problem all the time where it's like, that's what I'm talking about with this sort of like stacked understanding of like cooler than one thing or another shit. And it's funny with like my chem, like the last song on Danger Days, which I love a lot, is called Vampire Money. And it's them just being like, oh, like we won't, we don't want like this Twilight shit. Like, it's nice that you thought of us, but we don't want money to make a song for Twilight.
Interesting.
Like,
Okay.
we're too good for that. We're too real.
But like
And
their
I'm like, wait
shit,
a second.
dude, their shit is even more like for kids than Twilight. I mean, the music from Twilight is Carter Burwell, and it's beautiful and mysterious.
Yeah.
And
And it's like,
yeah,
but then it's funny because like and I think in another way they're like actually really smart and calculating, but like that they did a cover of Desolation Row for the Watchmen movie.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah, and
that,
it's like
actually,
that sucks ass. That blows so hard, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
like
yeah.
at a certain point, I think they maybe just like knew that 10 years on, Twilight was going to be more readily derided. Like that's just like somehow that's correct.
Yeah, they just
It's not true that like either thing is better, but I think that that's a funny thing, right? Of like that they exist in some sort of space where someone can be like, "Oh, that's for my little sister,"
Well, that's what
and then
yeah.
but they still thought themselves like better or more real than something, and in another sense, like they are. Like I would straight up just like take that over like Imagine Dragons. Like they do
Sure.
seem like real people.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, I mean, this age stuff, I mean, like, I don't know. Yeah, I always thought of My Chemical Romance was for 15-year-olds and Twilight was for like 11-year-olds. I mean, that's kind of it was just like an age. But I mean, I didn't even think of
Yeah.
like what's more or less cringe. It's just like kids. My basically all that 2000 stuff I know from like teaching guitar. I mean, that's what just these
Yeah.
adorable, charming little kids just wanting to know, just getting into shit.
Yeah.
And I would steer them, I didn't take them to the ink and dagger zone, but I would try,
Sure. Well, I mean, I think even just like, I mean, that stuff's fun too, because like my chem has the ability and maybe other shit doesn't have this, and maybe it does, and I'm just jaded or whatever. But like it has the ability to like, you can steer someone within their own catalog.
Yeah.
Like you can just be like, oh, like, why this song is cooler than that song?
Yes.
Like that's like, and you can talk about it. But I also think like I've been thinking a lot about this with Three Cheers. Like it's really, really well sequenced.
Yes.
Like it's very, very well sequenced. That closer rules.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I mean, they're just like, even just on like stupid, loud, quiet, loud shit to talk about like kind of the metallic stuff. There's a Pumpkins vibe.
Well, that's what I was saying, man. I mean, Black Parade is full on melancholy. I mean, that's their melancholy in the Infant Sadness. Like, straight up, like,
they're just very aware of like, they're not, and there needs to be like better language for this stuff. Like I often am kind of, by the way, someone in the comments was saying that this is an Anthony Fantano shirt, which is funny because his face is on it and that's true. But it's not, it's just like, it's a whole other thing. But it's thinking about that. It's funny because like there's this weirdness of like when I think about genre and like how they've been partitioned out, it's like, oh, it's amazing how much language doesn't exist for a certain type of thing or another. Like, oh, right, like you have like a billion types of metal, but you don't have a billion types of rap. But there are a billion types of rap that you're just not giving name to. Similarly, weird how much rock has to just sit in like alternative rock. Like how much shit that hit the radio that is not like each other but shares qualities has like a totally undifferentiated field.
Well, I
of
think
being
that's
talked
that's
about.
that's the thing is, well, it's like in metal, in or at least in like extreme metal or whatever, it's like
Yeah,
it's similar enough that then these micro genres,
yeah,
it's almost like the homogeneity, the relative homogeneity of
yeah,
metal compared to alternative rock
yeah.
makes the tiny differences between death
Of
metal
course,
and blackened death metal,
it's narcissism of small difference, but
in
with like
narcissism
genre. Yeah,
narcissism of small difference. I forgot that phrase. I was thinking
no, totally.
the proximal other is another one of them, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's more
exactly.
like,
And it's
you're like, ugh, get that thing that's almost exactly like me away from me.
sure. And I
But
think that this is
yeah,
like, I think this is an interesting idea though of like how, like, to think about really what My Chemical Romance is. Like, it becomes hard to talk about other than like at a certain point, like Black Parade. I'm like, oh, that's like basically an arena rock band, but
yes,
that's really like a conversation I'm having almost of scale.
right.
Like an arena rock band is any band that can fill an arena. Like that's
Yeah,
just categorically true. But it's like weird to me because there is this stuff that does feel more like metal than punk musically, but not in attitude. It has none of that face. But there is this weird thing of like Crew is doing Motorhead on Shout at the Devil, but
yes,
it's impossible for them to truly do that because they're pussies. And that's so like that's what Shout at the Devil sounds like. And then
yeah.
like they similarly are like there's this stuff that they're angling at that I think is like truly more, there's something just like front facing and like almost virtuosic or more interesting and like just sort of like in regaling someone
But you say My Chemical
in My
Romance,
Chemical
not
Romance
the
where
crew.
they're
Yeah,
like not really interested in just like playing the chords and then spitting when they're done. And
no,
they
not at
have
all.
songs like that, and those songs are used to punctuate other things
Like the way more mannered.
in a
Yeah,
track list,
yes,
but
yes,
it's not the band. And this is a huge problem when like listening to most extreme anything, like most like heavier, harsher genres, is that like a bunch of dudes just learn to make like the same thing. And it's like,
yeah.
oh, like I'm gonna do another one of those, and
Well,
we're
you
like
can't
eight
make
of
it.
those, and
Yeah,
that's the thing.
yeah, you can't make it to the top with that. I mean, nobody actually. I mean, that makes something inherent. It's automatically going to be underground or unknown if it's that
But it's also
homogeneous.
just like it's not like I'm cool with it being like I'm cool with. I just want the ambition to be like, and we're gonna take a little
Well,
lull
that's what I was always,
on the
man.
record.
Back in the day with Extra Life and stuff, like I'd have people be like, they'd be like, "Wow, there's like so many different sounds. You got so much different shit. How is it
Yeah.
all in the same band?" And I'm like, "It's like Zeppelin, like with ballads." Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like then there's like an Arabian one. Like it's like
Yeah.
here's our tune that has like a
No, and it's
sitar
like
on it.
I think that that's like a really I think that's a funny thing with Extra Life too, where like there's enough elements where I think there's enough elements that like make it marginal, right?
Oh,
Where
no,
like
for
it
sure.
couldn't.
But like,
But I think at the same time, it's like that's what I'm saying is like it doesn't need to be relegated to underground through lack of ambition. It should be underground
exactly.
because like that's truly like that's the audience. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
But you should be attempting within your power to make the thing that is the best version of what you're
Like the
doing.
great rock record. Yeah.
And like I feel like My Chemical, it's so fucking gay to say, but like I feel like My Chemical Romance is like the last band that like anyone has watched go from basements to like actually commanding like thousands of people.
Yeah. Well, definitely, yeah. Like you were saying, the last one. I mean, I can't
Yeah,
think of because there was a lot of okay. I mean, it's like guitar rock. Very recently, guitar music is just in
sure,
decline. I
sure.
mean, in general, but across the 2000s, it wasn't. It was still going, but no one was really reaching the heights that My Chemical Romance. Except, would you say White Stripes? Though they didn't really do basements exactly,
It's
though.
a. I mean, I
That's
can't
not the
even.
same. That's not
I
the same
can't
kind
think
of thing.
about that band for
Yeah,
real.
no, not a fan.
Nah,
Not a
and
big
it's
fan.
not the same. It's also not the same sort of like back to Crew. Like, there's no fucking fire
Yeah,
at a White Stripes show.
I guess not. Yeah,
Like Black Parade era is them being like, we are in like the stage is hell. Like we're going to
Yeah.
like Dia de los Muertos mixed with hell. That's what we're doing.
Yep.
But it's like, you know, like it's like downer hell. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like it's like, I mean, like people don't even remember like come to Brazil, like the like come to Brazil meme of like people commenting on YouTube videos being like come to Brazil. That's like my
come to yeah.
I would straight up just like go on My Chemical Romance YouTube videos and people would just straight up be like come to Brazil.
Yeah, like
That's real. That's like a real
zero irony.
What band in America, like you can meme it all you want, but what band in America right now has someone in Brazil who's like please come here?
Yeah.
Like straight up, like what's like who's doing that?
No, I know.
And it's like this is a real feeling that you can generate in people, and I do feel like making feelingful music, and it feels manipulative at times. It can feel weird, like I mean, in movies or anything else, to be like told, like, and here's where you cry. You do it in like movie scores and stuff like that, where you hear like the piano come in, and it's like, ooh,
yeah, but
I know what I'm supposed to do now. But like, there's something stupidly Skrillex knows how. Like Skrillex is on he's on like this J-pop record I really like by Hikaru Utada that came out in the last month or two. But he's just like he's an old Scrams like fucking
he came up from that shit before.
He was in from First to Last and stuff, and it's like there's this like holdover of like getting good at what you're good at because like you came from a place of like eliciting a feeling.
Yeah.
And like you actually like you're sitting down being like, I want to make a song that makes someone horny. Right. And then I'm going to do that. I'm going to produce that feeling.
Well, that's like that's a real pop vibe. You know, you got some producer like, we got to have a sexy one. You know, we're going to do a
yeah,
but it's like you start with the attitude or like.
But to think of that in like actual, like it's one of the most like, it's one of the most beautiful, cool, fucking weird ass things that exists to be like, oh, like I'm going, like there's no reason these sounds should code. Other than just like down pitched, sad, up pitched, happy, like, you know, up minor chords and major chords, like straight up. Other than that, like these things do not have to code one-to-one to feelings. Yeah, and yet, like you're trying to elicit feelings and you're like succeeding in that. And that's really cool. Like building tension for people and then like giving them that release is like an exciting and like I think a noble cause.
Yeah.
And maybe there's enough of that shit because there's thousands and thousands of records and it's all, but like I mean when I think of all of the like shit, and I do listen to like truly like these dudes here like Jack Callahan and Jeff Witcher, this is like truly obtuse music that like is for like bonked on the head individuals who are just way up their own ass. But at the same time, my favorite music in the world is like Kanye West. Like that's like a guy who still wants to make you feel a thing and is like really interested in like what musically can be done to make you feel something.
Well, his shit is often, I mean, the noisier stuff. I mean, it's still disarming. I mean, as much as it's trying to connect. I mean, there's definitely like confusion elements with this shit. I'm interested though how you keep bringing it back to Crew, which is you know, I mean, that's awesome. But we were talking about Motley Crue on the Discord. Is that where
I mentioned it there? Yeah.
Because I was saying how they should be considered post punk. Like I don't know, they've been on the brain a little bit. But it's funny how I don't know. Like you were saying that they're like less mediated, maybe.
Well, I was just saying like back then, I think they were like you said they were not as self-aware or like self-conscious even. And I was just saying that like back then, it's like. There's just not as much for them to be like, oh, like we're doing something. Like they're participating and it's part of a historical process and they're like not even totally aware. Like imagining like imagine like all four members of Crew getting together to be like, we have set aside 12 LPs that are currently coming out and we're going to listen to them to know what everyone's doing. That's not happening. Like in the CD era that happens. Like there's bands for better or for worse that are sitting down and being like, oh, like we know what this stuff is.
I read some somewhere like I read some copy of like a Motley Crue like a press package, like a pitch, like their manager's pitch to like a major label. Yeah. And the way they were talking about, they were like, these handsome young men are the next Beatles. They were like, they're the Beatles for the 80s. And you realize, like it's not like something of like, oh, we're like this one niche thing meets another niche thing and it's going to get popular because it's mixing the niches. It's just on some like, this is great rock music. We're the next thing. And ironically, they have so few songs that have withstood any kind of test of time. I'm not saying there's none.
Well,
But
that's
like,
what I like. But that's what I like about like that's what I like about Shout at the Devil.
right,
It's
yeah,
just
like
like the records after it like gets into this fucked up zone of just like that's the crew everyone like knows
yeah.
super
No,
well.
Shout at the Devil like sucks, but I mean that's why it's awesome. I mean, in my
But
opinion,
it's great. I understand for sure. And they did a Beatles cover. There's the
well,
Helpless Filter.
yeah, I know they're trying to like. Well, what I mean by sucks is that it's like it doesn't have like it's not like My Chemical Romance where like, hey, you know, even if you think it's shitty, it's got like
Yeah.
the big, even if it's cringe or whatever, it's got
Yeah.
those big like undeniable hooks. It's like Shout at the Devil is kind of like I don't know. There's something like thin, like hollow about it that
No,
I
that's
like.
real.
That's what makes it.
No,
punk.
that's yeah,
Like,
but I think
that's what
that's
makes
like
it nasty. You know.
that's kind of what's interesting to me though, is like I think when I was thinking of I think like the technical skill of my chem also becomes something that is like similarly like weirdly hollow. Like you aren't when you said like do you know whether or not he like the suicide stuff is real?
Yeah.
And it's like, could you? Like
No.
at that point, like in a post like in 2002 and 2004, that dude knows the stuff to say.
Right.
Like truly knows. And like that stuff is extremely keyed in. But it's not like I was thinking about like how kind of like weirdly sexless but not totally sexless My Chemical Romance is. Like they're not a horny band, but they occasionally will like drop in a fuck the way that like a PG-13 movie drops in a fuck. It's like it's very aware of where it's doing.
Well, he's like, I mean, he's gay, and that's not like in no gay. All the shit's gay, but he's a practicing homosexual. And
what, Gerard Way?
Yeah. Right?
Is he?
Yeah. Isn't that the deal?
I thought he has a wife and kids.
I thought the whole deal was he's gay, or he fucking like, I mean, or he like spread that around or something.
No, he's got a. I mean, he could. To be fair, he could be gay. Like I'm not telling you you're wrong.
No,
I'm telling you that like he married the chick for mindless self-indulgence, and they have, like,
no shit. Okay, yeah. Gerard, the Oracle is hooking it up. Yeah, Gerard is bi.
Oh, Gerard is bi.
So there you go. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. That's like a 2010s thing. That's like Tyler the Creator shit. Like that's you know.
But he actually he actually he sucks his periodic dick to re to re up. Yeah. We were talking in the live stream that got canceled, as it were, literally. We were talking about sucking dick.
You have to re-up.
Yeah, you have to once in a while suck dick just to re-up on your ability to say slurs and stuff.
Yeah,
you know? So it's like,
for sure. There should be other kinds of dicks you can suck to get other slurs. Like it's like a video game.
Yeah. Or you just
it's like side quests.
Or you just have this like Nalgene full of like a black dude's cum and shit, and you just like take little sips before you just say the most offensive shit. Anyway,
but the like weirdness of
Senum's okay with it.
No, he can't. So like he can't be. You're right. He is gay, but like it's to me it's like this weird thing of like being aware of like there's other bands that are just like so disastrously horny, especially in this like New Jersey era. Taking Back Sunday and Brand New both being one of them. Dude, yeah, I mean, that's my childhood for sure. I love like as a person who like talk about like progress, like Brand New cleaned up into having like a more kind of like alternative rock career or whatever. Yeah. And all of that shit's unlistenable to me now. The only one I can hear is the pop punk one. Like I can I can listen to the first Brand New record. Great. Fine.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like not. But like those are like that's what's funny is like that New Found Glory shit, that Saves Today shit of just like I have an ex-girlfriend, fuck her, she cheated on me, all of that. My chem's always been really good about avoiding that.
Yes,
but
yes.
It's not without a certain craven quality. Well, it is aware of what it's doing for sure, in a way that I wouldn't say it's honest. Like I don't think Gerard Way is sitting down being like, had I not gotten that out, I would.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you can never exactly tell what's sincere or what's autobiographical or what's
I
not.
mean, Kanye West, you can definitely know, but I understand.
Yeah. That's a different kind of. Yeah, but I mean with that MCR shit, it's like there's moments that feel more like it's coming from an earnest place. Literally, just the music itself, and
Definitely.
like just the riffs. I mean, there's just some songs in the middle of that record that just have parts that feel like, okay, I don't love Sunny Day Real Estate. Like that was never like a huge thing for
Uh-huh.
me. But that definitely feels like super honest emo shit to me. Like it
1000%.
just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So there's moment, like I do hear different tracks are kind of different. You know what I mean?
No,
Where
definitely. And I think that
some of those feel more like that. You know?
that's the thing that like, and this is true for like all fiction. Like I think he's really good at saying, at like putting a little bit of himself in everything. I just think he also has like a real understanding of like, just like what kind of imagery you should drape all of this shit in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of, oh, I like, went to work today and it sucked.
Yes.
Like that's just not the kind of thing that it is.
Yeah. Well, 13-year-old kids don't have jobs unless they're like quite poor, So it's like, I mean, it's sort of the audience isn't coming home from work, they're coming home from like detention and shit.
It's so you're someone in the comments actually asked about like post-hardcore and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a funny thing for me because I was saying this in the Discord the other day too, where like I was a big like At the Drive-In fan and shit like that. And there's this stuff with My Chem occasionally too, where like it hits this like this kind of Mars Volta territory, weirdly kind of like Coheed, which like I'm not a fan of Coheed and Cambria like that, but like it has like a weird sort of like thing.
Yeah, I was too old for those things to mean a ton to me. But even at the time, I was like, this is substantial music, And I mean,
definitely
like Mars Volta, I mean, also because it's a little bit proggy and stuff. But even like,
oh, for sure. I mean, like Thomas Pridgen played in that band, like straight up, yeah, like amazing.
Yeah.
No, but like I think it's I was like, I was big into a lot of post-hardcore and like I've mentioned it a few times, but like Jeff Rickley from Thursday produced that first record. I was really into Thursday. When I saw My Chemical Romance, they were like Thursday was opening for them, which is still kind of funny to me because like that's another thing is like taking bands that like were your OGs with you along for the ride.
Yeah, that's legit.
But then they're like your opener.
Yeah.
Where it's because they're never gonna have the ability to like connect with that many people. Yeah. And that's like that's an interesting thing, right? Is like what is it that there's some part of it that's in the DNA at the smallest part of My Chem from the beginning where they're just like they've got this scalable ambition where like other bands that were playing making similar things like Ink and Dagger, like I think that second record, the self-titled Ink and Dagger, is really good and really ambitious musically.
Yeah, but not
there's no ambition towards like we are going to go and play in Sri Lanka.
No, that's never gonna happen. That's not Come to Brazil. That's just
and that's what I'm saying. Like the Come to Brazil thing is like a certain like this is what I love about their like bright like My Chemical Romance's like final really bright record is that they get to like a level of notoriety, and I think they recognize like, hey, like we can't just it's get darker or we're actually just Queen now.
Yeah.
And it's like, so they do this weird thing where there's like a lot more electronic production and they get kind of into like 60s and 70s psychedelia and they build this whole like concept record about like weird, like you just think about like some sort of like sunshine cyberpunk shit.
Yeah, that I barely checked out that record at all.
I understand.
I listened to like a couple like parts of a couple songs just to brush up on this. And I was like, oh, weird, they did that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it is weird. It's weird. It like reminds me of like Here Comes the Warm Jets.
Oh, and I love shit. That, like I fucking loved it. Yeah. Well, that's what you do after Black Parade, though. You do. That's what I'm saying. It's like kind of disappointing, but because it's way different, and you just.
But they're not. Yeah, exactly. But they're not willing to go like, oh, let's get back to our roots and do like a straight at your neck record.
Right.
Like they're not like, and I think that's really cool because it's a really interesting thing now because they're done. Like there was a little hiatus in between Black Parade and Danger Days, and I was like very fervently like on My Chemical Romance's message board and like paying attention to like what was happening with them. Like I remember like demo leaks from like live shows and stuff of like songs that might be on the next record.
Love it. Love
Garbage.
it. Love it.
Like I was just
I
like
love that you were up on it though. That's,
I was a
that's so
kid,
sick.
you know, like I
That's
was
so
into
sick.
stuff.
Juan wants to know, Charlie, what were you listening into the early 2000s? My answer will sound so pretentious that it will annoy people. That would be like Derek Bailey and Evan Parker, and then some Bolin, just T-Rex in general. And then I was getting out of regular death metal and getting into sketchy black metal. But wasn't super into sketchy black metal yet, but was kind of
really.
anyway,
I love Derek Bailey. I love that.
Oh yeah,
like the drum and bass record.
That's
really
so
sick.
weird. That's such a
so
weird
sick.
vibe that he'll just do his thing. He's like, I'll just just turn on the Derek Bailey faucet, and Derek Bailey will come out of the, just
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
But no, no, it's a weird thing of them sort of being very clear about, we're a band of this stature. We're going to maintain being big. We're going to maintain a budget, which is a big thing that like I think about a lot, is like people just like fucking whining and complaining about not being able to tour over the last 2 years, which in my ears sounds like not being able to lose money, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And
there are
like,
people out there, man, who
I
are
understand.
coming home with bread, man.
I understand, but like I'm sure there are 35 of them, and that's great. But like I can't. It's not a serious concern, maybe especially in my world where it's like you wanted to go. And it's like it makes sense maybe if you break even, but like then you got to calculate lost wages from missing time from your job, and it's
no,
like
totally. You know what must make people mad? Like bands, okay, no examples or whatever because it's friends,
Sure.
but like bands that are just big enough that they could quit their day jobs if they tour, but like not bigger than that, and then they had their shit shut down during COVID, and they're like actually financially kind of fucked because they were relying on that little bit of money. And then those people seeing a bunch of podcasters just suddenly blow the fuck up on Patreon, just doing this. I mean, I'm not blowing up on Patreon, yet or like whatever, but like just to see the COVID world of just fucking edgelords just talking and just like money just pouring, and it must be so.
But I don't want to, and I don't want to yammer too much about that sort of shit. But like, there's a lot of that stuff too, where I'm like, also like. Yeah, and there's an actual demand for it.
Yeah,
like the podcast exists because people actually want to hear it, and like you make music because you want to make it, and that isn't a job. That's just not a job. Like it's really cool if you can just take it and form it into the shape of a job, but like it's not. And it's really interesting to me when I think of like this band, because it's like, oh, like these albums sound expensive.
Sure.
And it's like when people are like, oh, well, like, no, there's not that much money involved in getting sales, like return on investment for your records now. And I'm like, there's also not that much money that goes into making them.
It doesn't
like
have
it is
to be.
So much less money. Like when Lars Ulrich was talking about what he was talking about, he was also talking about like losing return on investment on like a very expensive endeavor. That sometimes was very often not footed by labels as much as people would like to think. And that is not what is happening. Like I would say like Rollout included, like a Phoebe Bridgers record just doesn't cost that much money.
I wonder how much a fee. I mean, I wonder. I mean, what do you think that does cost to like what's the budget for a Phoebe Bridgers? I mean, I feel like $10,000 is like for the like you don't have a, $10,000 is like if you're a band that like has a day job but you can break even on tour.
I would say $60,000 went into Phoebe Bridgers' last record.
Which is not that crazy given the how.
And I would say that Phoebe Bridgers definitely has made $60,000 back very easily.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm saying is like when people are like, oh, there's no money in it, and it's like, well, there's also not. Now you have CMI Fairlights on your computer.
Yeah,
like it's not the same thing, man. Like it's just not, and it's like it's weird to sit back and be like, oh, like this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but there's not a lot of production value and just true expense and like luxury that goes into making most things. Like even just like booking studio time and like getting things mastered, like you and I know how much that stuff costs. And it's like, it is the same amount of money that hobbyists spend on things.
Exactly.
Because we are that. And like we have an interest of our own accord that we would not, we would just keep doing if like no one paid for it. That's I think that that's extremely freeing, because I see a lot of people making no money and also making these sort of artistic, like bloodless artistic decisions of someone who has like a label.
I know,
like stakes, you know,
like the worst of both worlds.
Worry about my fans, and it's like, there's no money in this. You should do whatever you want.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's that's why, dude, you know who I have respect for? I mean, the second MGMT record, it's just perverse moves. Like they were just, you know, like they were huge. They could have been like, oh, we're gonna top that.
The one with Bela Lugosi on it and stuff.
Congratulations, the one.
Yeah,
you know, the
so
one that's
I really like that Alien Days one after that.
That's kind of good. Yeah,
that one's good. And then they are now like big.
Yeah,
because they have the like shitty like almost John Mouse record.
Yeah.
That's so funny, and it's a good cover and stuff. But it's like just TikTok money flowing in.
Yeah, well now it's a whole new phase with them. But I just meant like at that moment, just this vibe of like not just giving a fuck, man. It's weird, man. I just throughout my whole 20s, man, I was just like, I'm going to be an amateur, or you know, I was like, I'm like a musician with a day job. I was like, that's what. You know, all like my heroes and shit, all, you know, they just taught, you know, teacher, whatever. But then it's like, but then with Extra Life, I'm like, I was saying like, oh shit, wait, like Dirty Projectors makes money. Wait, like Shoo Shoo makes money. I'm like, well, actually, wait a second. Maybe I could. And now it's like, no, actually, it's back to the day job. It's back to the, you know, committed to day job.
I just think life. It's like, I mean, I think of, we've talked about Vanessa Place, Chris Krause, who helps run Semiotext. She's like a real estate agent. Like, just like a lot of integrity comes from like not needing to like sell this shit.
Yeah.
It's just not, I don't think it's good. And it's like, if my chem, I don't think it could exist now, because like, I don't think anyone like really wants shit like that bad.
Well, definitely not guitar music, period, man. You know, I mean, it's just not, I mean, who's like a new, I mean, yeah, there's no equivalent of My Chemical Romance on the like arena, you know, basements to arenas vibe. Is there even an equivalent as far as like a guitar band that people kind of live and die for? You know, are there teenagers who are like living and dying for any, you know, putting the fucking wrist razor down for like a rock band? Like who
it would actually be really sick to me to hear that Zoomers were like not killing themselves because of 100 gags.
That would be amazing.
Because also those kids are like melodically very smart.
I hate that shit though, man.
I understand.
I want to like it just because I'm all like trying to be like on some how do you do fellow kids shit, but like it's just like no. Dude,
no, I love that. Like, I love it. It's so stupid.
I like Blade or Bladey or whatever.
Oh, I love Blade.
It. You know,
no, he literally has a line where he's like, "My name's Blade. She calls me Bladey," which is so sick.
That's great.
No, but I love Drain Gang shit. Like that stuff's great.
That's interesting. It's interesting shit. Yeah.
I mean, there's also, I think the path is just different now. Like talking about like heavy to commercial or whatever. The last Ice Age record was really polished and really just like smart. And I thought it was interesting because that band was like, you know, just like kind of like it boy cult. It was like a post Charles Bronson vibe, you know.
Yeah. It was like 2011.
Serious guy shit.
Yeah. Because I remember when I think I saw their first show in New York. And they were like 20, because I fucking been around. They were like 20, and like, but the whole crowd was like people in their 30s who were like, yes, these kids are doing the new, like, it was not gonna blow up. I mean, it was hip, it was hipster shit, but not gonna.
Yeah,
you know, when your whole crowd is 35-year-olds, like, it's not.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see, like, where almost like I also really love that Fat White Family band. Like, I'm obsessed.
Oh yeah.
But like those are, once again, I think all those dudes are like, being smart means something different now, where it's like it's too referential to like everything that I like now, like 100 Gex or like Fat White Family and stuff. It's like, it's almost like Zappa kind of smart, where it's
Yeah.
just like it's like a sort of like wry intellect about how music is made and how like one type of genre relates to another, which I like because
Yeah,
it
there's
like
like a
tickles my
meta, a
brain or
meta
whatever.
vibe, and like a
Yeah,
a consciously bad taste vibe, you know, which almost makes it,
yeah.
which almost has like an art world vibe to it, you know,
Yeah,
where it's like
and I
just
think
like
that there's
deliberate
more
schlock.
people like that. I think there's more
Yeah,
people whose interests are built around this previous knowledge and having moved through multiple phases or whatever of their life and
yeah,
recognizing that like those phases are kind of similar. Like you sat and were like, I'm really into techno and I hate screamo. And then it's like you're 35 and you're like, oh, right. Like it's all the same. I
yeah,
got the
yeah, yeah,
same kind of enjoyment from all of it and it's
yeah.
all fine. But it is that, I mean, to talk about like, when you say like there's something like kind of really earnest about my chem, it's not even, it doesn't even have to come from intent. Like the feelings you get from it are a kind of enjoyment that like remind me of it. Yeah, it's nostalgic, but like remind me of like owning CDs and listening to them again and again,
Mm-hmm.
which is not the kind of music listening that like I or anyone else does. Even
No.
though I listen to the same Kanye record as it comes out 40 times in a row, it's not the same thing as
And
it
you're an
being.
exception. I don't think most people do that. I don't think most people sit through these records the way you
Most
do,
people, I
and
mean,
like, you
you
know.
you said you for this, like you barely like other ones, you like kind of just like hit songs, and
Well,
I'm not like that. Like I
I
can't.
wish I had. I wish I had done a little more work because I usually. I mean, you know, but well, for that Doctor Doom live stream, I already knew that record like every single
Sure.
word on it, so it was like a little easier for me.
But it no,
But
but it is an interesting thing. Like, I mean, that's the other hurdle. Like, I used to talk about this, where like the hurdle with getting into experimental music for a lot of people used to just be like pure duration. Like
yes,
the first thing would be like you would hear a band of any sort make a song over 4 minutes long, and you'd start to be like, this is kind of weird.
yeah, this is art shit, like art
This is like,
music. Yeah,
ooh. And it's like you
yeah.
realize like there's a thing on my favorite Drive By Truckers record. There's like this like lore thing at the beginning. There's a little song about how these kids flip their car on prom night and they're like sitting there waiting for the ambulance to come for 30 minutes. And Freebird's been playing on the radio the whole time.
Uh huh.
And it's just like, it's a very long song.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
that's just like it's like two yokels. Yeah, Freebird's like the longest song in the world. But like that's like I remember that being a big thing for me, is like getting into Mogwai and being like, damn, the songs are getting long. The
Yes, yes,
songs are
yes,
like and
yes.
it doesn't come with genre or like idiom or anything else. But now it's just like I feel like for a lot of people the like hurdle is straight up just like hearing more than one song on a record. Like not listening to playlists is like the first hurdle. Is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
like
just like
that's
people will be
experimental
like, I
music.
really like this new album, and I'm like, oh cool, like yeah, me too. I really like, and I'm like talking about the sequence, and they're like, oh, I just like put it on shuffle,
Right, right,
and I'm
right.
like, are we like, what does
Right.
that mean? Like I
The
can't even,
album itself is
I
the
can't
album
talk
itself
to
is experimental in a
like
way.
it's a
It's like a
pack of songs.
yeah.
It's just like it's like a new. It literally feels like a video game where you have like DLCs that drop, and it's like now you have like downloadable like new songs have entered the pool of possibilities for you, and it's
Yeah.
like that's not what a record is.
I
Like,
know. I still love the record, man. I still love the
oh yeah, for
album.
sure.
It's an awesome thing. Like, you know, you have the rising and falling man, the
Well,
fucking,
and
you
it's
know.
good because it also like it prioritizes and it helps me create sets which are useful. Like we can talk about Deleuze or whatever else, and it's like, oh, like no, but like it's useful to have a fucking set, man. It's useful to be like, these were my 100 favorite records of last year, not because I didn't like my 110th favorite record of last year, but because it's like useful to
Yeah.
talk about that way and to think about that way and to think about things as better than each other. It's just useful. And so when I think of like albums, like I like the album because I get to be like, oh, I really like a lot of Black Parade, but I don't like to skip songs. I don't skip songs, which means I have to hear teenagers every time I have to hear Black Parade, which means I'm not going to hear Black Parade that often, which is good because that helps me get around to the other shit, because there's so much good shit. What am I going to do sitting around just being like, oh, like I'm just going to listen to Black Parade again, even though I have to hear teenagers? And it's a bad song. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's twisted, man. Like
No,
it's
no, no.
actually like it feels like a trick is being played on.
I haven't heard any other songs by them that are that bother me. Actually, that's
That's
one of the,
that's 100% true. I agree.
I actually kind of forgot about that song. Yeah,
That's good.
people are talking about horror, who I kind of want to like, but I don't really like them that much. But I like
What,
the
like
attitude.
H0909?
Yeah, yeah,
Not a
yeah.
big fan.
But I wanna get down with it. I mean, yeah, these still aren't like people. This still isn't stuff that people live or die for. Like I'm not
Yeah.
like big rock bands. With like um yeah. Well, it's like bands aren't even that big. I mean, even just talking about financially, man, it's like it's just not a good. I mean,
What's
to
a
have a
terrible, it's a
yeah,
terrible venture.
it's
Like,
a
even if
bad
you stand
model.
to make more money than like the solo performer, it's like, well, there's fucking 4 or 5 of you,
Yeah, yeah,
and
and
you
you
have to
don't.
lug all that equipment.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
bad model. It's a
it's
bad
yeah,
model.
it's weird. I mean, specifically economically, it is also in the sort of in the studio setting with everything else. It's like you're getting more and more people who also, because they need to eat, are just becoming players.
Yeah, like
Where
session
it's like,
players and shit.
yeah, or
Yeah.
like, like collaborators, but it's like you just, you could have contributed to like 7 records this week. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
like
yeah.
you needed, like, you needed the money or whatever else. And that's totally fine. But there aren't a lot of bands. And I like think about, I don't know, there's things that it's also just like there's the Momus thing of like, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 people,
Instead of minutes.
like,
Okay,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
more and more true, where it's just like, I, and this is it exists on a continuum or whatever, but if I was like, oh, like Adam Lehrer a year ago, there would be like 12 people who are like, know who that is. And now it's like, 45 or something. But it's like, it's just, it's not, but there's people for whom it's like, oh, that's a real guy. And then for someone
Yeah,
else,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's true with bands like that band Parquet Courts had some like kind of large S for a minute. And it was weird because they played on Ellen. And then I had like friends of mine who were friends with them who were like playing on Ellen now.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
wait, what is that? And that's another thing of like, just like, what is, I feel like the last like big band, and this isn't big like My Chemical Romance, but it was just like big for a kind of person at a certain time, and it was definitely like an older person, is like LCD Sound System,
I
where
know,
like,
man. I know. See, that's one of those bands. I was there for like the very, very beginning of that
yeah,
shit in New York, and I just kind of was just like, I don't. This is not. I don't
sure,
care. Like it's
of
a
course,
yeah,
I understand.
yeah,
I was and continue to be a fan, but I understand, like, it's a weird thing of like, but I think what that means for someone is also just different now.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, I think as a listener, you're just not like, I think people, like we said, are not living or dying for a record period that often.
Yeah,
Like, even people
the
who are like,
album.
oh, they've maybe heard 5 records this year that are new. And I think people are very, very low. And I don't think it's good, because like, I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes out, but a lot of people are just like not very interested in new things that come out, or even hearing them beginning to end, or even really like participating in them very critically. Like, it would be cool if everyone was like sort of like weirdly critically jaded, and it was like, we listen to all this stuff, but we're just not as enchanted anymore. But like,
Well,
I don't
that's
even
not
trust
the
these
yeah.
people to listen. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, well, there's a glut nowadays. It's like there's just so much shit. But I mean, I don't know about living or dying, but like, but someone in the chat, I think it was someone was bringing up Death Grips, who that's something that I actually thought was really awesome in the tens. I know it's like Fantano music or whatever, but
Sure.
I thought that was really interesting shit that no one was living or dying for,
No, but there
but
were.
it had
Yeah,
a
it was.
vibe of a band that people are like, I know the songs. When they start that song, I get hyped. I know the like it had
And
something of
knowing,
that.
and the differences between that and say something like My Chemical Romance also help you chart the difference between that time and this time,
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah,
like, it is, and similar amounts of like people being very into the lore and whatever else, people
yeah,
being very into like what Ride was doing before, the fact that he was like, he makes paintings, people getting into what, like like Zach's
Like
other
Hella,
bands and
Hella
shit,
and stuff.
Hella
Yeah.
and whatever else. And then like, but like that becomes so emblematic of what like the tens are, where it's like there's now like a famous band that bails on your shows and people are fine with it.
Yeah. Right.
You know, because
right.
that's like classic. Like that's
Yeah.
fall shit.
Yeah.
But like no one was like, there weren't like kids in high school you could talk to who were like, isn't it cool the fall would just not show up? That's
Yeah.
not true. That wouldn't happen. But like
Right.
Death Grips was this way, and it was like
Yeah.
a thing that happened while I was in high school
That's
for
the thing.
sure.
And that was a band in the sense that, I mean, it's only two guys, but if either of them
No,
stopped,
three, but yeah,
yeah. But I mean, if either of those guys stopped, it wouldn't be Death Grips. You know, it wasn't.
1000%. Yeah,
It's not like one. It's not like a moniker for one
and it,
guy.
but and then once again, it's like that's a blended case of it also being like rap, because it is, you know, it is more appealing to a type of person that I think ultimately has shifted over to caring about that more, which is also why something like horror can't appeal to me, because like I already have my misgivings about Death Grips in the first place. I mean, you're interested in like something like Show Me the Body or whatever else.
Dude, I did not expect to love that shit, dude, but I checked out Show Me the Body. I was like, this rips, dude, it rips.
Yeah.
And well, that's a band that people get tattoos of the logo and they know every word and they go off at the shows, but it's not really a guitar band. Well, the banjo, whatever, but it's not. There's nothing about that that's trying to turn into a more poppy thing and then, you know, become an arena.
But that's, I mean, that's what's interesting too about like My Chem is like it's not pop when it's doing what it's doing. It's not like, I don't like, Teenagers is a very annoying exception.
Yeah.
But like they're not making songs that like I can think of and be like, oh right, like that's like, you know, like a summer, you know, like those songs were just like good to put next to Nickelback and Hinder and Puddle of Mud and be like, this is better.
Right.
Like it was good if it showed up on like alternative rock radio and like those things were better. Yeah. But it wasn't supposed to like sit and, you know, I don't know. And that's a weird thing too, of like even just like getting a grip on what actually matters. It's like everyone you've ever met hates Nickelback, and yet like somehow those streaming numbers are so high. So something's going on.
Depends on who you're.
Yeah, like it's like it's truly like it's a very out of touch thing to be like, what is. And it's because you and I have always been like, we're not actually going to get in touch. We're not going to like join, you know, we're not going to join some contingent of people that like could tell us what actually matters to them. But like, I'm sure there's like shit that
about Nickelback, happening. You're saying.
Huh?
What you're saying about what matters to them about Nickelback? Or no,
like just like what band matters to like most of America. Because part of it is that like My Chemical Romance like had a sweeping popularity, with a youth united by malls,
in every town,
by like VH1 and whatever else. And it's like it's part of it is that like everything's too. People talk about decentralizing stuff all the time, and I'm always just like, that's another area in which people are like championing something capitalism's going to do for you. Where it's like, that's already happening, bro. Like you already don't have media that you trust.
Right.
And it's already getting balkanized.
Right.
And you're not going to, there isn't an equivalent to like VH1 right now. Like even everyone who reads Pitchfork shits on Pitchfork. Everyone who watches Fantano shits on Fantano.
I know. I think Fantano's sick, dude. I'm like,
it's totally fine.
He's
totally
sick.
Fine. He's like he's a very reasonable, annoying little dude.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a real guy, man.
He has a place in the world.
Band that I think had a big thing, and it's like, once again, it's a band that's like niche and doesn't really matter to like most people. But there was a real movement with that Have a Nice Life band over the last 10 years.
I know. It's weird. They kind of like had this. Yeah, like
I was a part
like
of that
classic,
as well.
You know. Yeah. They're classic. I see it. I guess
they're
I
on
see
the
it.
like 80th fucking press of that record now. Like
I
they're
know.
straight up
Yeah.
like they make money doing that, and
Yeah.
that's cool, man. Like
Yeah,
it's
they're one of these special bands that had like one record. It's like, I don't know, like Operation Ivy or some shit, or like
they
whatever.
have, yeah, they have a few, but yeah.
It's
Well,
like
like
that
one,
kind of
and
thing.
that's a good example is like they made a record a few years ago that is garbage.
Oh yeah.
And he's really the main guy in that band. Dan Barrett is friends with Fantano. Like they go on hikes and shit in Connecticut, and Fantano just like ripped into it. He was like, "This is terrible,"
That
and I was
look,
like, "That's
he
awesome."
has integrity, man. He has
Yeah, no, I like
integrity.
that. I think it's
That's
cool to
fucking
shit
sick.
on your friends in
Dude,
that.
I can't believe we haven't. I mean, I don't know if there's very much to say about it, but I can't believe we have not mentioned Hot Topic as a fucking institution. Just
Oh, yeah.
given that it's like we're talking about this mall goth stuff and
So,
how.
what
it's
is your
like,
first experience with Hot Topic, Charlie?
Just hearing about it when MySpace came out, and just hearing like when MySpace first came out and it wasn't even as huge a thing and it was just certain types of people were on it, you know? So it was kind of
sure.
like, oh, like really you're going to join MySpace? You're 25, man. That's for teenagers who shop at Hot Topic, right? I mean, that's, you know.
So I'm like, I'm going as a kid.
Yeah.
I'm at the Hot Topic.
Yeah. Got the Manic Panic, man.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my mom like loved dyeing my hair, loved shaving it into mohawks, like was very, it's so weird. Like, it's just so weird, like how much she cared about this stuff for me. It's
beautiful.
And yeah, it's fine. It's totally chill. I mean, it's the path has led me to here, so it's fine. But yeah, like I'm at a Hot Topic. I'm getting the clothes. I'm buying Say Anything records. I'm like enjoying myself. I'm having a good time. I think it's a really funny way to look at your life and be like, oh right, like there was at one point, like there were kids who were like, oh, maybe one day I could work at Hot Topic.
I know.
And it's like, damn, bro,
so
like that's the worst. Like that is the worst idea. And if I'm not sitting back right now being like, I wonder, like like I'm about to do this thing with this big ass building behind me and shit. And I'm like wondering who's cool. Like I'm wondering who's cool in town, who's like into real stuff. Never once have I been like, oh, I'm gonna go to the Hot Topic and find out who's there. That's see what they're into.
Is Hot Topic still exist? I mean, is that even?
Well, malls barely exist anymore.
Is that right? I mean, that's because I'm from the city, so we didn't even actually have malls. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
I mean, in the 90s or in the 2000s. So I just yeah, like I mean,
malls were important. Like they were. It was cool to. It was like an airport for not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, it was great.
A non-place.
I mean, that's like, and that's what like a lot of the vaporwave shit is about, or whatever else. But like, and we can talk. I'll mention that again in a minute. But like, the Hot Topic stuff's funny, like Journeys and Spencer's Gifts and stuff like that. Like, all part of a contingent of just like weird places you could walk around and see some like maybe kind of like sketchy sex shit if you were 12 or whatever else. It's a weird thing where like. I just can't imagine those adults now. Like I can't imagine the people who actually
they must have changed. They must have changed their whole thing up. It was just weird for me to see that come up because it was like oh, this is like this cheesy mall version of goth. But my experience, I might actually have been out of touch, but my experience in the 90s was that real goth wasn't really that big then. Like real goth shit was in the 80s big, and then in the 90s it felt like it was just coasting. Like, I don't know, man. In the 90s, it was just, I just remember it was like some girls were goth.
Yeah.
Like, that was like.
You're kind of missing. This is another one of those, like, this is another one of those, like, prescriptive things, though, right? Where it's like, it wasn't goth music, but, like, Marilyn Manson happened in the 90s.
True.
Like Marilyn Manson through 9 Inch Nails, through Evanescence. Like these are big, dark,
it's so funny. Like
brooding. Like this is real, like faggot music. This is.
It's so weird because I didn't actually think of those bands as goth. I was really into 9 Inch Nails, and then I thought Marilyn Manson was cheesy. but I
Antichrist
mean,
Superstar rocks.
no. I was wrong about.
Yeah,
But
that album's actually amazing.
and he's actually a better vocalist than Trent Reznor. I actually, just as far as like the vibe. But yeah, I didn't think of that shit as goth music.
It's not but like
it is.
you Attack is an emo, like it's not.
No. True.
It is about what like those people glommed onto. Someone in the comments earlier was talking about how like a lot of genre stuff seems to metastasize more around like the culture that picks up on it, and that's really true in specific areas. Like that's emo even is a sort of mitigation upon the idea that alternative rock doesn't have enough, genreification shit, where it's like, oh, like let's get some fucking categories in here or else this whole thing is going to fall apart. And it's true though, because it changes how you think about it. Like when you talk about this with jazz or anything else, like when you start demarcating things and you start understanding idiom, you start to replicate or like work along that idiom.
Yeah. Or
and so
response,
it creates, yeah, exactly. And so you end up having this stuff that like becomes a real thing. Like you're willing it into existence through communication or through like cultural memes or whatever else.
Yeah.
So there's like, I mean, the goth shit is like, there were a lot of people who dressed in all black and like wore black nail polish and like,
yeah, I guess.
And that's like, I mean, that there were definitely those people. But I mean, I don't know. Like I was born in 1994. I don't truly like, it's hard to know at all though. Cause like you're older, but like you're from the city and like, there's a lot of shit going on. 90s is weird. Like there's all of that like false grunge shit, which also like grunge is a great example. Grunge is none of the things people think it is. And yet it is. Like,
yeah, I mean,
Nirvana is grunge. It's not, but it is.
Well, like, yeah. I mean, well, they wouldn't have called themselves grunge, I don't think. I
and
mean,
no one else who made that music would have. But like it ultimately is.
My memory of the 90s was that post grunge shit. I mean, like really, not even Nickelback. I'm talking about just all that, like Offspring. I mean, just like the worst, like depressing. At the time, I thought it was depressing. At the time, I was like, this is the worst fucking decade. But the 10s hadn't happened yet, so I had no idea what a shitty decade even could possibly. I didn't even know how shitty a fucking dude. No, let's not even. I mean,
no,
this was like the worst. I mean, it has to have been the worst possible decade anyway. Yeah.
No, I mean, go off.
Right. Yeah. I'm just fucking. I am so grateful to be the age. Okay. I'm not necessarily grateful to be 41, but I'm grateful to have grown up when I did, because dude, if I were a teenager,
you're literally just describing my life. You're like, man, if I were you,
well,
it would have sucked ass. And I'm like, yeah, well,
no, I mean, it's like, I just remember
I was
like
16 in 2010.
Yeah. So your like, teenage
the last 10 years of my life have been a thing for sure.
Yeah. Cause I just like I had fun in college, like actual
no, and that
fun.
Like I mean, like, I've been running show houses since I was 18. I've had lots of things that I care about. It helps that I'm like a fairly sober person, so like my idea of fun doesn't even like, it's not even fun, like it's just dumb. Like I just like dumbass shit. But like, like part of it is that like, yeah, the stakes are different for sure, and stuff's like weirder. It is interesting to me like how talking about the My Chem stuff and how sexless some of it is, I'm like, this sounds more like it's like made for now.
Right. The sexless, right.
Like then it was like, man, like I mean, like I love like Blood Brothers and shit. And I'm like, I love like horny music.
That like, stuff was definitely hornier, man. I mean, that shit, that white belt shit, fucked. I mean, that was like definitely like locust dudes got ass, like fucking like all that, like orchid dudes were like they when they would come to Wesleyan to play shows, they were just fucking just plowing through the whole fucking freshman class, dude. You know,
and that's exactly like, belts, that's man. The whole. That's a real thing of like I very much came up through like emo shit, like immediately. My voice has sounded like this my whole life. And I've only been like this big in like the last 4 years. Like you met me even at a certain point, like pre-beard and shit.
Oh,
I
you
was
were
like
skinnier, man. Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
twinky.
You were
Yeah.
a Twinkie. Now you went from twink to bear, man. Pretty fast.
And,
Except you got it. You got to suck that dick, or else you're not going to be
this is what I'm
either,
saying.
man.
And
You're
that's
just
the thing is like I'm like a, you know, not to get weird or whatever, but like I've had because of like weird things that happened to me as a kid, I've been like hypersexual since I was like pretty.
yeah.
And so like that's just been like a constant in my life. And then I was like in middle school and it was becoming obvious that I was like, oh, people have been picking on me, not because I'm like just weird, but because like people can tell that I'm a little gay.
Yeah.
And so it like emo is like a real refuge because it's like, fuck, I can be bi and that can be cool. And like there's girls who are into it. Like there's girls who are like into the fact that you're bi as a dude, which like, of course, like, yeah. Polya, like end of civilization, it's done. However, for my life, it was like very useful. Emo was a real refuge, even like sexually, to just be like, oh, like like I'm a little gay, but like I still love girls. Like it made sense for me because it was like the perfect example of like, oh, like, like I could be gay, but I'll like, like I'll take your girlfriend also. Like this sort of like weird posture. And that's like very much what it is. I mean, like Gerard, like someone mentioned in the comments when you were talking about him being gay, there's stuff for sure. There's a lot of shipping and kind of like fandom stuff where like treating it like a fucking anime. There were a lot of girls who were like constantly thinking about Gerard and Frank kissing and fucking. There's like a lot of that, whole lot of that.
Do girls really get turned on by guys fucking? I feel like they just say that because it's like this thing to say. It's like this, like, like.
I don't know. The thing is like the type of, yes, ultimately the truth is like, yes, in some small sense, yes. But it's also like, it's a very specific sort of guy. Like you don't want like Mike Ma fucking dudes. The harassment architecture guy.
I don't know.
You don't. Okay, he's the guy who's like the mini Ted K.
Okay, all right.
Who's been, like, stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But like you don't want like these. It's a weird thing. I think it's also a pre-adolescent form of sexuality where like girls are like, I think they're just like interested in like the idea of it when all of us were like not even like men.
Right.
Like it was still just like weird. And like, there's something about my chem where like, they're very boyish adults where they're not like, you're looking at Gerard as like a 30-year-old and you're like, that's a kid. Like that's,
the vibe is very kid. Like it's got this like Tim Burton vibe. I mean, I sort of like, it is sexless. See, I don't know. I was saying how like Orchid and the Locust and these bands and the White Belt bands fucked, but really that was like screamo and scrams. When I think of emo in the sense of like the Midwest emo that we both don't like, that was the most like eunuched out. Like, I mean, that was just, you don't even get more sexless than that.
Yeah, but there's still something charged about sexual jealousy, and like there's something. When I talk about the sexlessness of like my chem, I'm more so kind of saying like how there's like no songs about their bitch exes, and there's no songs about like fucking their exes, and there's no like, it's like when I say like that PG-13 thing of like they'll literally like at some points they'll be like I'm like they'll refer to themselves as a fuck, like a good or a bad fuck, and it's like that's cool and all, but like you do not fuck.
Right. Well,
like you're not like there's no lustful songs.
Yeah.
In these, and I think that that's weird because like I love like like where reading Our Lady of the Flowers.
Oh, tight.
Again for the thing you and I have been working on.
Yeah.
And
I lent Bradley my copy of that.
Nice. And it's like it's a real like one-hander, and it's not just like read with one hand; it's written with one hand.
Yeah, well, he like, says that, right? He said, like, wasn't that his thing that he said?
He's literally jacking it while he's writing this book, and that's so sick. And I do. That's like a lot of that sass shit feels that way for me. That's also what I like about like a lot of noise is like the like sort of like sexual neurosis shit.
Well, you know what though? Here's the thing though about emo. I'm really actually really into this, like how libidinally and how libidinal it is versus not, because and what's sexless. Because the thing, okay, here's what's sexless to me in music is like righteous indignation. Most politics I find unsexy, with some exceptions. Nation of Ulysses being an
Definitely.
exception.
Ian fucks for sure.
Some, I don't know, MC5. I don't know. Actually, like Public Enemy is pretty sexy in a weird way. But
Well,
like,
no,
but
and also like that's MC5 is like a big touchstone
yeah,
for where
for all
my
that,
chem goes.
for all that way. Yeah, but I mean, but I don't know. Like, so I did yeah. So not even say politics, but just like righteousness or morality, it to me is like an
Sure,
unsexy thing. So a lot of that, like, I used to love Rites of Spring,
sure.
but I don't feel. I mean, that's on some weird shit where it's like there's
Yeah.
some like libido like leaking out, but so much of that is like I'm wounded. It's not right that you left me. Like I don't know. So
Bro,
much of that shit is like
Drive Like Jehu fucks. Yank Crime,
I know
like
what they. I
yeah.
know that they sound cool. I've heard a couple
It's like
songs and I
Rites of
liked
Spring
it.
meets like shellac. Like it's
Right.
good. It's like fucky. Like
Yeah.
there's like actual, and I think that like
A little bit Jesus Lizard energy maybe or something like that.
sure,
Kind of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Icarus Line has some of that too. Like
Right.
I
Right.
think you would like that band, but I don't know. It's a weird thing. I definitely kind of I also think of it in terms of like how much lust there was from like actual like all of it comes from this sort of like underdeveloped adolescent state of like the like oh it saved my life. It's like well you probably weren't going to kill yourself, but that's I mean sure it's a thing to say. It's a
That's
me.
harsh, man. That's harsh.
But you're speaking a half of dialogue and you know what you're supposed to say. You're participating in like a thought form that is like prepackaged for you. And I don't mean this by like My Chemical Romance. It's just like an extremely memed out way to think and talk and be. And like all of us have
Yeah, just like
participated
suicide egregores. Just
that like
coming at you.
anyone would say like that music would and I hate these platitudes, right? That like music would save your life or that like music is good. It's like mostly it's just like a hobby. Like it's a cool thing when it does that and it's cool when it doesn't. But like most things is like it's not actually like music does that. It's like anything you were listening to when you were at your horniest, most upset
is horny.
version of yourself is like huge. Like it's just like burned into your fucking brain.
I know.
Like, but it is this weird thing with the sex stuff too, where like I knew a lot of girls who had like very serious sexual ideation about My Chemical Romance.
Right. Okay.
And it's like that, and that's wild because it's like in a way, like I'm not making some judgment there. It's just fascinating. Like the idea that like you could be a vessel for that for
this childish comic book vibes,
Yeah.
Like, how is that? I mean, that's like jerking off to like Coraline or some shit, or like the Nightmare Before Christmas or something.
It is. Yeah. It is exactly. But I'm sure someone's jacked off to Jack Skellington.
Yeah. I mean,
that's true. And it is. You say it's the Tim Burton thing. It's definitely that. It's got like and that's a weird thing too. Is like just like wondering kind of what cultural detritus gets wrapped into what. Like there's like these concept aspects to the record, and like Gerard was an illustrator and wanted to be an animator, and like the cover to Three Cheers is drawn by him.
Yeah.
He's like, and it's like that's
cool.
No, I think that's a part of it that's like interesting too, is like that they seem to have like a little bit more control over these things than like other people.
Yeah.
Like James Jean, who did the cover for Black Parade and like did a bunch of the art for it, was like making comic book covers before that and is like a very famous painter now. But that's like a very just tapped in thing of Gerard to be like, oh, like this is gonna matter to people and I think this is gonna commercially work. But it's like that's not a label decision or even like
that's a
someone sweating them or anything. It's like it's very clearly his will.
Yeah. Well, comic books are this beautiful thing I never really got into, never really my culture, but a lot of my friends were into it. And it's such a beautiful thing for kids where it's like, it's arty, but it's non-elitist, or it has that like for the people thing. I mean, this is obvious things to say, but I mean, it's sort of, you know, yeah, like you can see how like it makes My Chemical Romance like it gives it that like smart artistic kid vibe, but it's like not without any of the sort of it's not collegiate,
Yeah,
you
and they're
know.
like they're so interested in like a very classic, ambitious rock form of like Three Cheers does it, Black Parade really does it, Danger Days really does it of like the concept album.
I do love concept. You know, I love concept albums,
Yeah,
man.
and
It's
but
so
that's
good.
like it's interesting how much like I mean I when I saw my chem like their encore is Cancer.
Mm,
And it's such a fucking bummer to just be like, oh, like we're not gonna like come out and play another song and
yeah.
it's gonna rock. It's like people chanting for someone to come back out. And it's just like the dude from Reggie and the Full Effect playing piano in the background
Okay. Okay.
while
Yeah.
Gerard is just singing about dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like a really I mean in that way it feels ritualistic and kind of fucked. Where like I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh right, like I mean like when Astroworld happened, like when the Travis Scott, like the guys the people died
Yeah.
and
Got
shit,
trampled. Yeah.
I was just thinking about like, oh man, like I one of the scariest crush I've ever been a part of was out of My Chemical
Was that
Romance.
my camera? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like just like and it's just like to know that this is the like gestalt force of a bunch of 16-year-old women
Right.
is like crazy. Like it's
Yeah.
really wild.
Those 85 pounds add up, man. You know.
Yeah, dude, like it's truly like that room would have been like, barely a few tons soaking wet, but it still hurt. Like it truly like my ribs were going and shit. And I mean that same year seeing Page 99, I thought I was gonna like really die and shit. I was like, this is violent.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
like adult men like punching me in the face for I'm like
I
visibly a child.
one of the first shows I ever went to was Helmet with Sick of It All opening, which was pretty, and I hadn't really been in a pit before,
Uh-huh.
and it was just like, woo, spicy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing of like being able to just to like really kind of say, oh, like we're this kind of band, we want to do this sort of thing. Like they were still I like that they weren't. I mean, I saw them on the Danger Days tour, and they were playing those songs, and I liked that stuff. But they were also playing the rest of the stuff. They were happy to like play music all the way back from Bullets, and I think that that's how a band like that should be, right? I wonder now what's up because like a few years ago they started posting imagery again, kind of being like, oh, like we're gonna do stuff, and all
Mm.
their imagery since they did their greatest hits and stuff is like back to the dark shit, like we did that Bright album, but like we know what we did mostly, and it's
Yeah.
like cemeteries and skulls. Um, Crazy to think about the Dia de los Muertos shit now, because it's like that a band would for sure get canceled about
Oh,
just
just for
like
the
all
appropriation
the
and shit.
Sugar
Yeah.
Skull
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like it's weird because they're like they were supposed to tour and COVID happened, and now they're playing that When We Were Young Fest.
That is so fucking yeah.
I don't even like that doesn't feel like a real thing that's happening.
AKA when I was not that young, even then.
Dude,
But
that fest just logistically doesn't make any sense to me.
it's
It's one day.
yeah, when it's like
All
50
of those
bands of
bands
like
are gonna play, and
the
then they're
hugest
also
bands of
like
ever.
straight up like they added another date, but they just
Of all
are
the
doing it
same
all again.
all the same
And
bands
like
twice.
it just doesn't seem like it seems like a money laundering thing.
Well, this is
Like I'm like, and this is like true with a lot of stuff, like music industry stuff and Hollywood stuff is like often the like most noble thing that a like truly evil billionaire does with his money. Like
Yeah.
it's like their want to participate in Hollywood is like truly their like nicest, goodest want.
Yeah,
The
that's
rest of
it.
it's
Yeah.
fucked.
Like
But
way
like
more
this
evil,
is
yeah.
fine. Like they just want to participate in Hollywood and a movie gets made and that's fine.
Yeah.
Same thing with like music stuff. But I am just like, dude, this has to be a money laundering thing. Cause like how are all of those bands gonna stay in Vegas for a week to then play that next show? Just
Yeah.
doesn't work. But yeah, they're
You
gonna
think
play
very
that show.
logistically. Yeah.
And like I'm like, do we get a new My Chemical Romance record? Because I want it.
Yeah.
Like, I want. He's like, and this is the thing. The sexual stuff is weird. He's like schlubby now.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen what he looks like.
Nah,
but
no,
I
maybe
cannot
not in like 10
imagine
years.
he looks like a comic book guy from Simpsons.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just I'm like, how
He's gotta come out with a more like a noni looking outfit, just some like
who's gonna do this,
flowing
man?
fucking
Like
flowing outfits.
part of it was him, like, and that's the thing is like a lot of the sex stuff was in like his stage presence and being androgynous, and I think that's I will say that's more the crew thing for me than anything else, is the sort of like sexy theatrical like pussy boy shit where it's like very clearly like a like a loser's idea of being hard or a hard guy's idea of being gay, but like
I
it's just
mean,
like,
crew though. I mean, those dudes were like street kids and shit. I mean, like they're like tough. Like,
but they're also like leather
yeah, no. I
in the
mean, they were
same
like,
way that like, you know, like it's kind of gay. It's
well,
definitely kind of gay.
it's just that weird. That weird '80s glam metal shit. I mean, but
Yeah.
it's like, the sexuality. Yeah, I don't even know. Like, did women view them as androgynous, given that their attitude was just like, I'm a fucking bro, but their outfit is just like,
I don't know. There's other broier things though. Like they're just
no, for
it's like
sure, no, for
even
sure.
back then, like there's a lot of shit there where that is like
Well,
actually made.
well, it's just such a funny comparison, because it's like Motley Crue are like more feminine, like infinitely more feminine looking, and more just like macho and misogynist and brutal. Like it's just both things just on
That's
10.
that's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Yeah.
But no, like the My Chem thing, it's like there's a lot of I do wonder what it would be like to like I don't go see bands on a stage in front of me anymore if I can help it. But I'm not gonna go see My Chemical Romance on tour because like most things I don't know how I would handle being in a room full of people that want to see My Chemical Romance.
Yeah.
But I
Now
do want to.
it's weird.
I would like to hear a record.
Yeah. Well,
I'd like a record.
You know what bums me out so much, and like My Chemical Romance will not do this because they don't have to, but like the like, and I'm not even disparaging bands that do this, because you got to do it
Sure.
if this is your lot in life, but the like plays so and so record in its entirety for these reunions thing, like I understand, like, if you're Interpol or something, like that makes a lot of sense, because it's just like, let's face it, this was the best one by such a long, like a landslide. But it's like, I mean, a band like My Chemical Romance is not gonna ever have to do that. But it's like there's something so depressing to me about these big indie or whatever you want to call it, whatever Interpol is. I like them, by the way, quite a bit. But
Turn on the Bright Lights is amazing.
Oh, it's great. It's fucking great. But just there's something just career-wise depressing about this vibe of like, they didn't really break up, but they kind of did, but there's kind of a reunion, and it's like, let's just face it, let's just play the good record. It's just like, there's something like
I said, when I saw Page 99, they did all of Document 8, and it was like great, but it's like that's what I would want. I mean, not that I wouldn't like to hear other Page 99 songs, but like that's where it's like a Scram set should be as long as a Scrams record.
Right. Okay.
And should arc like a Scrams record arcs. And I'm cool with that. That's cool for me. But I also saw City of Caterpillar twice. And they got back together and they played in Richmond, and then I saw them again at the Wolves in the Throne Room bar in Olympia. Like that those dudes have a bar.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but it's I went there and saw City of Caterpillar with Thou, which was very funny. And very cool, great band. Love that shit. They didn't play a whole record all the way through. It's weird. It's like I think that there's money in that for sure, like you said.
Yeah. So
like,
no, I don't mean to disparage anyone. It's just there's just something about that where it's like a reunion. Like, I mean, the Swans reunion, at least, well, it went to be more of a reunion. It meant to be a whole, this whole second career or whatever. But at least that was like, this is brand new shit. It's kind of different. Blah blah.
And they
blah,
play old stuff, but it's
like
different.
A couple of songs, but it's not like they do like Kill the Child and whatnot.
And they play like 2 and a fucking half hours.
Respect.
It's crazy.
Although none of those records even touched the old shit. Not even close. None of the new records.
I like some of the new stuff for sure, but
it's fine. I like it. Okay, but it's like, I mean, but
it's also just like it's not a totally different band, but it's very reasonably just like you could like the two bands for very separate reasons.
True. Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's like I liked Swans because I wasn't like in that era. I was very happy with it because I was like, oh, I do not want to listen to like Godspeed You Black Emperor do this anymore.
Yes.
I don't want to listen to Mogwai do this anymore. Like, it was cool for me as like a post-rock fan to be like, this, but maybe some words.
right.
And like maybe some real heavy shit.
And a dude with some personality. Yeah. But
Yeah.
even whether you like or don't like or are okay with the Berserker, it's like that's a non-depressing way to come back together, you know?
Yeah.
But what do we got here? We got some little comments and stuff. Yeah. Who's in the comments? I'm like, I fall behind here.
Oh, there's so much. Wait, is someone talking about the Deer Hunter?
Talking about the movie The Deer Hunter? Oh, we got
no. It's a emo band, but not really.
That's the most emo shit in the world. You name your shit after like a movie, like some, you know, like
it's even worse. It's the Deer, DEAR Hunter.
It's brutal.
It's brutal for sure.
Brutal.
What is like the last time that you like were into a band like this? Because My Chem couldn't have been the last time that you fucked with this stuff.
Well, you mean a band like this, like an emo-ish band, or no?
Yeah,
like
an emo-ish band, like a band that would be like relegated to someone else's sort of like shame drawer or whatever.
The last time, I mean, like, I don't know, man. I was just snobbing out, like throughout high school, man. You know, I was just like, if it ain't Swans, like, I don't want it. You know, like I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, I was super into Smashing Pumpkins as a fucking kid, but that's not even cringe, though, man. That's like not even cringe.
Yeah,
now.
no, I'm talking about like post My Chem. Was there stuff that like what else were the kids in your lessons bringing you?
I mean,
and what do they bring you? Like you still, you still teach adolescents?
None currently. Well, now
what's the last thing an adolescent brought you?
The last thing was that band Portugal the Man.
Fuck.
Do you know this shit?
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, there's nothing good about this, but it was, but the thing is, I don't fuck with kids at all because it's like there's like there's fucking like there's some good chords in it that's good for them. Oh, you know what? I had this, but before I moved here, I had a really cool little student. And she started right before I moved, so it was a bummer. But she was like kind of like a girl, but kind of non-binary-ish, kind of looking little friend. And
you're doing great, Charlie.
No, I mean it was just, you know, like I asked pronouns. It was woke as fuck. It was great.
Yeah,
I scored so many points. You know, she was like, "Oh no, she," but thanks for asking. I was like, "Much obliged, hon." I didn't say hon.
I love that you're saying the right thing, which is like non-binary is a kind of a look. It's also kind of a look.
Well, the word
like,
androgynous,
you used to just be able to be like, oh, like, you know, a tomboy.
Right. No, what happened to tomboy, and also, yeah, what happened to tomboy or just like art fag, like just these words and ideas that don't exist. But in any case, she a great kid, but she brought me some Mitski. She wanted to learn some Mitski, and that's some shit that little kids. I'm not like, well, I'm not really a fan of what it is. But I have a lot of respect for her, actually, just as a musician and a performer.
Totally.
She's kind of like a crushing singer. But that's some shit that means a ton. That's not a band, but that's something that these kids don't slit their wrists over, you know. And I was like, yeah, like I knew her in New York, and she was like, what the fuck? But yeah, like whatever. But like yeah, that was, I don't know. Yeah, Mitski they're into. I mean, as far as bands, these kids bring like old classic rock shit in, and they don't know what it comes from. You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, like it's just all from the internet, and there's no historical. It's all just a historical shit.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, know? Yeah, but that's like, I mean, it's never had more of a chance to be that than now. Like you're describing historicity as if it's like only accessible through lived experience, but half of lived experience is being like, I like Skinny Puppy and I just got the CD that they had, and that's the one I've been listening to.
Yeah. Well,
and it's like, wait. You're not listening to the discography. You've been listening to the same Skinny Puppy record for 10 years and it's not the one.
That is, yeah.
And like, that's the historical experience of most people was like, I heard it and it wasn't the one and that's what I got.
Right,
And
right,
that's
right,
just like,
right.
that's true. Like most people's experience wasn't like dig, like when people talk about digging or whatever, it's like, well, you could dig now.
No, no,
Like,
it's true, but it'll be like there will be. Well, actually, see this thing. I shouldn't say stuff is like incorrect or ahistorical,
sure.
but stuff that's like as time goes on, things. For example, well, this was in the 2000s or early late
Yeah.
2000s. I had a student who she was like a really really normie girl, like so normie you wouldn't even call her a normie. She was just like gonna be a lawyer or something, you know,
She was
like
a
just like
person.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was just like a human being on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But she was like she was just like yeah, like I want to learn some like Jack Johnson. Remember that dude?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's like and also this guy Elliott Smith. You know, I've been getting into this like kind of like this like sad folky shit. I was like wait. Okay, we're talking. I mean, like you know what I mean. But it was like weird
No,
to.
but also like that's like in
That's kind of deep. Like that's kind of based in a way. You know what I mean?
in hindsight, that's the same thing though. Like it's history and time allows you to be like, no, that's the same. Like,
Right.
at
That's
the
the
time you're
thing.
like, wait a second, like this isn't.
Right.
No, but it
No,
is.
to her, it's just like, oh yeah, well, obviously the Elliott Smith, yeah, obviously the lyrics are kind of darker, and you know he seems a little bit more haggard, but basically we're not dealing with apples and oranges here, you know. But it's like to me,
I think that that's an interesting thing too, where like some of what history gave you was like just detritus.
Yeah.
Straight up, and that's kind of what I'm talking about with like the my chem stuff or whatever else is like you say it's kind of Queenie, and it's like I don't know, like I'm less likely to listen to Queen than this.
True.
At this
Yeah.
point, like still, which is weird because this is supposed to like cringe me out more or something because of like the specific cultural moment it was. But like I'm not listening to Queen regularly. That's not happening.
I actually listen to Queen like a lot more than probably most people do.
Sure, I understand.
But well, you know, man, sometimes I think I can't remember who it was. Someone I was reading, some sued online intellectual person was saying like when you know they were like when you read a history book of like the world history or European West or the history of the West, there's like you read about the 12th century and there's like 3 pages in your history book that sums up the 12th century, and there's like how are they going to sum up the 20th century? There's going to be a 2-page synopsis of the shit. You think it's going to be different? Because I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
It's got to be different because the issue is, and this is so useless for anyone who cares about Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, but this is actual having Xylon on shit, so that's fine.
Well, no, dude.
Like the Devor Loeffler, who Barrett and I are both really into him. He's a German philosopher, talks about this, which is like second order culture. The idea of like basically successive mediated generations are processing reality with like a higher frame rate. So it'd be like, you know, like seeing something in like a higher frame rate where literally generational gaps are just like you're looking at the same thing and processing it entirely differently. Which like I've noticed this very recently when someone in the store that I help manage literally was just like, I saw one of those memes, like every time this meme goes by on my timeline, and I'm like, oh my God, he's talking about it like it's a program or like an app, like it's a commercial. Like he doesn't understand. Like I've seen the meme posted by different people. It's different every time. He's processing it like, oh, that meme came on again.
Okay.
And it's like it's just like that's his frame rate. And so like what I've been a huge part of this is that like history is like a very, very, very new thing for any layman. This is like back to Dante and like the Vulgate where it's like
history period as a consciousness, you mean? Like
yeah, well like history as like a thing that people can corroborate with each other in any way or reference, like pre-universal literacy, which like we're not at, but like we have relatively universal literacy, is so fucking recent.
Right.
That like literally like if you were to like if you're going to sum up the 12th century, it's also like, well, someone in the 17th century couldn't sum up the 12th century at all. Yeah, like they literally would be like 500 years ago.
Well, that's what's interesting. I mean, we're talking about like ancient Greece or something. It's just like myths, serve this function of this weird dream that you're
Sure.
waking up from and shit. And it's like no one's like, oh, is that real or fake? It's just like there's no proof one
But
way or
that
the other. We're
isn't,
just
and that's
living in
also
that.
not, it's just, it cannot be true. That
Right.
cannot be the actual daily experience of these people. And also, like literally, human civilization is so young. Like we're 5,000 years in tops, and that's like
Of
very
human
human
civilization.
civilization, not human existence, but like civilizations. You go back to Mesopotamia, that's 3,000 BCE.
Right.
That's 5,000 years before now. And then
Right.
that's it. Like that's the whole span. And the amount that we actually know about stuff going barreling back is like hard. Things that are like scientifically known, which is like carbon dating, shit like that, has to be extremely vague. But like cultural stuff is just like we have some documents that like, I mean, even just stuff like the Rosetta Stone, like really is super recent, like us uncovering the Rosetta Stone and like unlocked a whole lot of primary document shit, let alone like what even could you write down? Like what gets documented at all from a certain time is very, very, very different than the sort of stuff that can be written down now. So like the centuries, sure, like someone pithily will summarize a whole lot of stuff, but like we have a massive archive for the 20th century and then like basically almost no archive at all for 400 years ago.
Yeah.
Like how much stuff actually exists to go through from
No,
400
I feel it.
years
I feel it. No. So the thing, it is actually, yeah, things are actually different now as far as how it's going to be like summed up. I could feel that. I could feel it. I mean, certainly the 20th century. I mean, just the insane. I'm not even going to use the word innovations because that implies some kind of whatever, like overall teleology thing. But just like yeah, just the variety of stuff is just like 9 trillion times more accelerated than any other century. So
when it's also like it's interesting, like it's also interesting like what dumbs down, like we were talking about when I was talking about the Twitter thing or whatever else, like a lot of stuff acts to sort of like provide a shorthand which dumbs down your ability to like actually think through a problem. So like when Adorno says like that the Holocaust is like the end of poetry, is like marks the end of poetry, makes poetry an impossibility after the Holocaust. I don't think he means what a lot of people interpret that to mean. I think he's literally talking about the ability to flatten all language into like comparing awful things to a literal like perceived and existent hell, where like you cannot hit these mythological heights of like things are really, really, really bad and like you are capable of all this depth of meaning because you can like call up whole imagery of like Dante's Inferno or something. Because if you were to describe that stuff, you would be like, no, that happened at Buchenwald.
Yeah.
No,
No. I feel it.
And
I
that's
feel it.
real.
Yeah,
and
it sort of destroys myth in a way, and
that's what I'm saying.
Sort of,
so it actually flattens how much like actual depth can happen poetically.
Yeah, well, but it's going to come back though.
And that happens now, and you see it all the time, where people are like, instead of something being bad, it's like the Holocaust.
Right.
And then instead of someone being like a political opponent,
right, they're Hitler. Right. Yeah.
And so it's that I think that like really kills a lot of stuff. But I think that's working against a really interesting thing, which is that a lot of information is being generated by a lot of people who can also read and write it and share and talk about it. Like a lot of what, and it's almost solipsistic, but like a lot of me can't imagine living in another time simply because I like almost don't believe it exists. Like I almost don't believe it. Like it's not like you're an NPC. It's like everyone pre 1901's an NPC.
Right.
Like it's just like that's loaded up. This is the stuff, like, because this is actually like feels like the shit that can even happen.
I would like to read poetry written by who would be the best Holocaust denier poet that we could find. Like, who, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know any Holocaust deniers, but like, would that be inspiring if the Holocaust ended poetry? You know,
well,
you're like, well, that didn't.
What is Moldbug's all like beautiful thing of like of being like Nazis get wrong all of the time what like what the Third Reich was about, because like Hitler definitely wanted to kill Jews, so like Holocaust deniers are morons for saying that they didn't. However, Hitler didn't want to take over the world. that
Right.
and like
Right.
I love when
Right.
Moldbug does
Like
that, because he's
right.
just like, man, Nazis are really hung up on the whole like Jews thing, but
Right.
like
Even
he didn't want to take over the world.
right. Like there is actually like mythologizing that goes that like even from a not like insane Holocaust denier perspective. Hey, maybe then there's possibility for myth. I don't fucking know. But it's like for like poetry. But don't you think that Adorno thing of like the Holocaust? There's no poetry possible. I mean, that's just gonna fade away as the Holocaust becomes further and further in the past and just becomes like the Spanish Inquisition or some
Well, I don't.
dark thing that you don't.
I think the possibility is like a real, like that's just a polemic. Like that's just like a too high of a thing to say. But I think that the point of it is largely true, which is that you have to work against these sort of things that deaden language. You have to work against these things that deaden thought, which is just the difference between like a reflex and a reaction in your body is whether or not the neurons go all the way to your brain or if they just get to your spine. And like most of the time, what is like actually reflexive in people is that like they're thinking straight from like things are bad. And I always mention this like when we talk about like Nazis or something. I'm like, I don't know any Nazis, because a real Nazi wouldn't say the things that Nazis say.
Right.
Like Nazis that we all interact with or whatever say things like, well, liberals are the real Nazis.
Yeah.
I've met no one who's like, liberals are the real Nazis, and that's why I'm voting for a liberal this year.
Right.
That's not like, you haven't met an amoral person or a person like literally like you are meeting a person who like agrees with you that Nazis are really bad.
Yeah.
Like that's like you're working from the same block right there.
Yeah.
I mean, like Richard Spencer's the first guy who's basically kind of just been like, yeah, well, Trump didn't give me an ethno state, so I'm voting Bloomberg.
Right. Yeah. He's into like Biden and shit.
Exactly.
I wish that had tanked Biden. Wouldn't that have? Well, no, I don't actually, because we'd have Trump. But whatever. That would have been funny if Richard Spencer ruined Biden.
I wish it had tanked Biden.
Yeah.
But
you're allowed to say it. You're allowed to say it on the stream.
I'm allowed. That's probably not true. But yeah, no, it's a weird thing. Like it's a truly weird thing and I think that that's maybe what's kind of cool about my chem as well, is that like they're doing this like flirting with death very constantly. There's the vampire shit, whatever else. But it is a sort of like we're all like sort of like working and like living through like some monotonous, dreary ass shit and like need a little bit of magic. It is very kind of like heightening in a way that like something like Marilyn Manson truly just feels like spiteful.
Yes,
it is
absolutely
like very, very spiteful.
Absolutely,
and My Chemical Romance is like kind of like, and that's the Carnival Barker thing. It is literally just like you go to the circus. You don't live at the circus.
Yeah.
Like it's like, hey,
well, this is what the theatrical vibe is. I mean, this is what theatricality is.
Come all to this tragic affair.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tragedy. I mean, yeah. I feel like Marilyn Manson is actually more comic in a way. Like, I mean, not in the sense of funny, but if we're talking about comedy versus tragedy,
but that's
comic,
an interesting thing too, where like, well, that's a fun one. So like Deleuze and there's this interview that I quote a lot where he talks about the impossibility. He's like talking about Coldness and Cruelty, his book on Louis Sacher-Masoch. And he talks about the impossibility of a tragic work and how a tragic reading is often like a stupid misreading by the critic or reader, because no one makes tragedy, because I love this image of Deleuze saying this, but it's so like it rings so true for me, where Deleuze is just like, okay, so someone's sad, has felt a sad feeling, wants to communicate a sad feeling, and they're like working on how to make you feel sad, and they're like, damn, that's good.
Right, you're saying like that's
so fucking good. Oh, I'm killing it right now. I'm gonna make them so sad. Like you're literally, you can feel the joy radiating off of something where like someone's like, oh, I'm just gonna make them like fucking clench their gut, like this person's gonna bawl.
Right.
And it's like that's like that. There's like a real enjoyment that's felt in like even just like the technical ability to make that happen.
Yeah, this
where it's like I know I'm about to say this shit, and it's really gonna get to the thing.
But so,
and like
so
that's an enjoyment. That's an enjoyment. Like the truly tragic thing would be like someone who like didn't pick up a pen.
Right. Okay. Right. So just the fact of, well, okay, but so he's saying that it's impossible to write tragically because there's this sort of whatever, like, does he say jouissance? Is that or whatever? Like
he doesn't say jouissance, but yeah, like it's
vibe. But does that mean that it's comic or just that it's failing as tragedy? You know what I mean?
No,
like,
I don't think it has to be either. I think it can be. I think there's something to be acknowledged there about how like, and I think this is truly what like. This is the emo thing. Like my chem doesn't really do it for me necessarily. Like it gives me a lot of feeling for sure. And like, I get that like, but I listen to emo. Like I listen to lots of things. Like I listen to the Microphones or like I listen to Kanye to cry on purpose. Like I want to, it is part of the enjoyment for me. Like I know it's going to do that. And I'm like, yeah. Cool. I listened to like that second, like Dead Wife record that Mount Erie made. And I'm just like, no, I know I'm going like, and it's like, I'm doing it while I'm making bacon and shit. Yeah, like, I'm not even like, oh, I need to sit in a dark room. I'm like, no, like this is like anytime, all of the time music. I love to cry.
But see, that shit might make me cry. I haven't actually listened to those records, but but even like the Glow Part 2 makes me a little bit misty and shit, even though it's a little more cryptic and weird. But but fucking but I don't think there's any emo though that makes me actually get misty eyed. I mean,
yeah, I understand.
I mean, Rites of Spring gets me amped.
But that's the thing. There is stuff like that does it for me. But it's like, I mean, like I'm really into like On the Might of Princes. Is a Scrams band, but they do like all of the shit. They've got like all the sounds are there, and there is a great band. But like it's weird. Like I think it's also just a sort of like to just be prescriptive about it. To say that there are like a bunch of kids that were getting made fun of for like being interested in emotional music.
Yeah.
Like to literally be like, my thing is I like emotion.
Yeah.
Like that's a weird.
Well, it's a reaction to the toughness of hardcore. I mean, that's, you know,
kind of, but like, I don't think
originally.
Yes, but it wasn't like mall kids did not.
Are not right. Well, that's the thing. They're reacting against the jocks. Like they're reacting against getting bullied by the jocks.
Or like Nickelback or something. Or like just like, like normal ass, like fucking like bro rock shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I don't even know if it's like, I also just think it's tapping into like a certain type of subjectivity that people have where it's like the enjoyment of being emotional and being like feeling full is I can't like, I mean, without making a sweeping statement about how things were before, I don't really think of that that's like a part of the diet for people like 50 years ago.
No, I know.
That's you know what I mean? Like,
well, it's just because it's like, the more numbed out you get, the more, it's funny. When I heard the name My Chemical Romance for the first time, when that band came out, my first thought was that it's about SSRIs. I mean, my first thought is that it's like a commentary on fucking psych meds, and just like kids being put on psych meds. Then later you're like, oh wait, the chemical wedding, that's an alchemy thing, that's a hermetic thing, which actually I want. That doesn't seem to be their vibe at all, like the occult. But I can't imagine that that's totally lost on them. I mean, My Chemical Romance.
Death and celebration of death is, the oldest occult thing. But yeah, they're not like interested in that as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I mean, symbolically, I think they're involved in a lot of stuff that like is more than a cult. Like it's not.
Right.
Like,
no, but
they're literally like interested in like coding themselves in a way that is like effective,
Yeah.
But
I just meant the name. I just meant My Chemical Romance just being like a thing of
it's
the
an Irvin Welsh
wedding,
thing. The dude who did Trainspotting, he had like a collection of essays
called My Chemical Romance. Oh, so
no,
it's
like
about drugs.
And it's like it has chemical romances in the name, and Mikey saw it. But like it is I mean, there's like an addiction thing. Fall Out Boy has this too. They have a song called Out of Van Halen. Stupid.
Whatever.
But
It's
that's also
fine.
part of it, right? Is like as a huge critic of like the chemical imbalance narrative or whatever else now, like I had like a huge, like I was part of a generation that I feel like truly was like being treated as guinea pigs
It's fucked up.
for
It's
shit. And
super fucked up.
it's
That's
really
how
demonic. And like a lot of my worst feelings about some other stuff we've talked about is that I feel like that's not stopping anytime
Yeah,
soon.
man. No,
And
that's yeah. So that's what I kind of that's what I pictured their shit as, like some kid just gets put on antidepressants or Ritalin or something, and you're like, oh, My Chemical Romance, that's the only love I'm gonna have.
they some people in the chat are talking about Grant Morrison with the with like the magic shit, and it's like, I mean, this is a huge part of like the Gerard shit for me, is like he's like into comics and I'm into comics in a way that's like I'm probably more autistic than most people, but like he becomes like really good friends with like one of my favorite comic book writers ever named Grant Morrison, who's like in the videos for the Danger Days stuff and whatever else, and like big chaos magic guy. It's just like funny. Like it's just I think that like a huge part of his vibe was like, and it's funny you say the thing about like Crew and the Beatles, because it's like My Chem has that.
Right. Well,
Like
that's
it
what I'm
has the
saying.
like right off the plane shit, like girls screaming. It has the
Right,
like
more than the Crew. Like that's what I'm saying is the irony
definitely.
that they came out just being like, yeah, we play in basements, we combine these 5 influences, whatever, and they end up being like the fucking Beatles essentially. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. He's into chaos magic, man. That's some 90s. When I think of the 90s,
Oh,
I
it's
think okay,
super 90s.
it's super fucking like
When it's also like, I mean, all of that stuff is like cool if you are like, if you also let it like do what it's pretending to do to other traditions to itself. Like it's saying like, hey, you don't have to follow the rule books and aesthetics of Thelema or anything else.
right.
And it's like, well, and then it's chaos magic's also very metastasized and like into this like aesthetic set that is like very corny and dumb. And it's like, no, you should just like probably like never talk about magic out loud with another human being ever. You should just
Fair
like
enough.
keep it to yourself.
Well,
Because
the
it's like
cult is a cult. I mean, that's literally what it is that it's hidden.
it's
shit.
occluded.
Yeah,
It's exactly.
it's occluded, but the symbols are supposed to speak. I mean, you're supposed to let that's and not
But what
actually
happens
speak
when the
when they
symbols?
you know what I'm saying?
Who knows? You know.
Well, I mean, Hitler blows his brains out in a bunker.
Contributed a body of work to such a thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's no, the end. Have you seen Downfall or whatever that is? That the one with the classic that the meme was going around. I hadn't even seen that until recently. It's a fucking amazing movie, man. I was just like, it was just such a. I mean, it's kind of edgy, man. It was almost sympathetic. I mean, not sympathetic, but it was like, sure. I mean, just to see that, like, to see the Third Reich from the point of view of like a man's failed dream. It's like,
sure, yeah.
It's weird to see that, but yeah, the symbol's definitely shattered on that motherfucker.
What are you feeling about My Chemical Romance? How are we feeling? How long have we gone?
We're like at 240. I mean, we could call it. I mean, if
we don't have to, I'm down.
The thing is, we got 17 people in here. This is the most we've had so far. So people are just,
the most.
Well, no, I mean the most on this stream.
Oh yeah.
I mean the most on this. But it's like, man, it's like they almost just knew that we had stopped talking about music and just started talking about fucking the Holocaust, and then it's like people can just smell it and they just start swarming.
Oh yeah.
To the stream. Well, you know what? Who I never was obsessed with, but the Deftones is a band that was cheesy to me as a kid, and then as an adult, I was like, this is actually not cheesy and kind of cool.
It's kind of like, it kind of sounds shoegazy, which I'm always like surprised by. My friend is really good friends with Chino's kid. And like just like sets up shows in SAC and was in a band called Death Rogan. Just like cute and stupid.
Yeah.
No, I mean like the new metal thing's a big one. Like I love that first Linkin Park record.
Yeah. This
And
is
that's
some
like this.
generational shit because there's no version there's no version of myself that has ever listened to that and been like, you know what? It's just not that I think it's the worst thing on earth, but I'm just there's like no, I feel nothing good or bad. It's like
It's
not
just
anything.
so like it's so. And this is what's funny is like that stuff flips around the other direction eventually, where not only do I get into like real rap or whatever as I get older, but like I was part of the generation in which like the last generation I like to think of it as like of like white kids that skated and it was still cool, because
Is
then
that
it like
really?
right around like 2009 it like became like not a white thing anymore.
Yeah, that's right. No, it is way more, but with Tyler
And
the
then
Creator and
and then
that kind
yeah,
of
like Odd Future was a huge part of my high school
yeah.
experience and stuff. And he's come back around for me where like he had like a huge lull of like having his like coming out as bi phase and like becoming
Yeah.
very popular with children. And I was like, I'm not really trying to hang around. This is not cool. Like I used to joke that they should make Tyler the Creator say faggot.
Right, again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But and he's back. Like he's inches away from saying faggot again. Now he's really out there. Because he re-upped. He sucked a dick.
Yeah, you gotta
You do it. But I love that shit. But it was like definitely. I just like suddenly in high school was like hanging out with all these black kids who skated and like listening to rap all the time. And it's funny because like skating was a very like we listen to new metal thing, and now skating is like a you listen to rap thing. Like
yeah. Well, that was when I skated really seriously for 2 years. So that would have been 7th and 8th grade, and that was like definitely it was both rap and punk, but it was white kids listening to rap. It was like white kid. We were like kind of wigged out. We were super into Wu-Tang and would drink 40s and stuff.
I mean, you lived in like it was a very specific time to live in New York, and like
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
but I mean, I just living in the South is like it's a fairly integrated experience, and especially being as poor as I was, it was just like that's my life.
Yeah.
And in fact, like being into emo and stuff was like some of the like most. It was not normal. Like I still had like jocks and shit that like didn't fuck with me or whatever, and then I was still like weird, but it was like kind of the most like segregated like white experience of my life of just like I am now doing something that like kids like black kids didn't fuck with me.
Right.
It was like you're like like putting blood on yourself and shit, man. You gotta stop. Like
yeah.
That's fair.
yeah. It's like that shit. No, that shit where like black kids would like break your balls. Like, why do you do all that crazy white boy sex shit? I'm like, man, I don't know. It's just we like that. I don't know why.
It's weird.
Is. But now they're into it. You know what I mean? It's like
no, and that's the thing is like it's definitely. I mean, it was like my rock music, and like I don't even really. It was through that I was able to get into all of this other shit that then sort of dominated my time and energy. Like I, got really, really into scrams, and I would have never, like, I think a lot of that stuff, like it was like, oh, like I'm keeping My Chemical Romance in my back pocket while I'm getting into like truer shit.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, not going to talk about how I'm into that. But like it was still just like big. Like it was just a huge part of it. It was definitely part of the diet. I don't know. Like it's weird to me now to be like, I don't even know what a kid does, which is good. I shouldn't talk to children, but like, like
I know. It's
I shouldn't know. Like you get curious as a person who was formerly a child, and then you're like, no.
Ex-child.
It's like,
recovering child. Yeah.
No, and that's what we all are. That's like part of what's weird about getting. That's part of what's like weird about getting older, is being like, oh right, like am I at the point where like I'm now officially not that, and it's not like and that's like you for maybe like your 20s now, where it's like, oh, I can't talk to. But like for me, it's like teens and shit, where I'm like, oh, like I couldn't. Everyone in my life that I ever cared about as a kid was older than me, and I've always been like getting like sunned by them, and then now I'm like, oh, right, oh, I guess I'm older than other people, That's
Right,
true.
right, right.
That's crazy. Which is just part of like responsibly growing up and shit.
Yeah.
But I do wonder like what it's like. Not that it's. I'm glad that people have more music at their fingertips or whatever, but I would encourage them to listen to like a whole record all the way through. Love it
Yeah.
or hate it, whatever. It's just like it's weird to me that you aren't stuck with a CD anymore. I
Yeah.
would get that experience being in in a department store or at a Taco Bell, and you would hear a song, and then the song would end, and you would start to hear the beginning of the next song play in your head because you're
Yes,
so
yes,
used to
yes.
hearing the record.
In the sequence, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
certainly, obviously, I grew up on albums, so yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, yeah, you're like singing a song, you sing the next line. I'll tell you. I mean, you know what's great attention span wise that I love is just I return to just classical music periodically,
sure.
and just like for a couple months, I was just listening to like a Schubert, just like or not even necessarily just Schubert, but like string quartet, like every
Yeah,
morning. There's something about a 20-minute piece of classical music that is pretty sick because it's like not a full album, but it's like meant to be. It's like a short story or
yeah.
whatever. I'm interested in different forms of attention. You know, just like
Well,
what like
this is an
types of
interesting
listening.
bit where like the and talking about like old centuries and things that come in and out of vogue and history and stuff. Like there was someone on Twitter, I don't remember who, but they had pointed out there's like this hyperpop song that's really popular on TikTok that's just like literally built for TikTok. It's like 45 seconds long. And it's just like no,
Grindcore.
but like that's crazy, right? So like then I'm thinking about Ottilie and I'm thinking about Noise's Political Economy of Music.
Mm,
And this dude comes through and he's like, this is probably the first time in like 7 centuries a song this short has been this popular.
right.
And that blew, like, it really, I was like, fuck the, like, if a medieval peasant heard one little fucking chord from My
Right.
Bloody Valentine, they'd be vaporized. No, just like 45-second songs are in again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Well,
Like,
and then you wonder like when were they in? I mean, I guess if you're talking, what does it mean for a song to be popular?
like
Like,
a,
is
like
Happy
a,
Birthday as a
no, but like,
song? I
no, but
mean,
like, I'm talking about like a dude being like, I'm playing a lot of stuff on a loop really quickly.
right, 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 right,
Like,
right,
I'm going to do this and I'm going to do another one. And
right.
he's just like cycling through.
Oh, he has like many different 45-second sons, or it's
Yeah,
just
that's
yeah,
what.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love that
yeah,
idea. Like that's so sick to me,
yeah,
because it
yeah,
also then
yeah,
it starts to sound like it sounds like grindcore in my head, where I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know.
Or like Webern or something. I don't know, these like super short pieces and shit.
Well, and that's
Uh,
like when we were talking. I was gonna say something earlier when I had mentioned like vaporwave or something, but like you talk about the band and the economic like configuration of a band or something. You came around on One O Tricks eventually and stuff, and
Oh,
like are like,
so good. I was so wrong. Man, I fucking hate on stuff. And then I missed the boat, man. I missed the boat with a
it
lot of
doesn't
stuff.
matter. You need to question why you value like being in on the ground
Well, no,
floor
because you get a
of
lot
one
of
of
in.
yours.
Well, no, but the thing is, I am in on the ground floor of stuff, and I misjudge it because I hear like
Sure.
2 seconds of whack shit, and I'm like,
But then you've
whatever,
heard
but it's fine.
other stuff instead. You're doing good.
Whatever.
I'm
There's
just saying
always
like
stuff.
the
106
value
is hot
system
though.
that makes us it's good.
Yeah.
And but like there's a value to being that guy where like eventually 10 albums in, like I still don't think he could like fill an arena, like that's not what's happening with One O Tricks Point Ever. But like he's got a success that is pretty sustainable. It is one guy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's like I think about like shit that I don't even like Author and Punisher or something. And I'm just like, hey man, if you hit, you're gonna hit really hard because you have one guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even
Yeah.
have you don't have a synth tech. There's not
Yeah.
a guy going over there tuning your synths for you.
Yeah.
You're just doing that. That's
Yeah.
fine, man. Like that's
Very
cool.
economical model. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, but it's like there's more and more of that happening where like One O Tricks Point Never is now singing on the records. And I'm like, at a certain point, is this like, are you thinking that maybe you could hit? Not hit, but like hit marginally for you.
There are
It's a
different
question.
degrees
No, and
of
it's the
hitting.
problem is that there's no top tier anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there just isn't a top tier
There
of
isn't a
like,
Mike Hemrow thing to like, The thing is, man, I'm like I get pumped. The fact that the music industry is just this big weird ass question mark, and it's like shit's all crumbling, and like I'm getting to the age that I'm at, I'm weirdly like more pumped than ever. Not just musically, I'm always pumped musically. That like never even falters.
Yeah.
But like career wise and shit, I'm not
Mhm.
even talking about weird like I'm gonna hit like so high, but just the vibe of like there's all these possibilities of ways to kind of sort of hit in different weird ways because there's no top tier, and it's just kind of like I'm kind of like I feel younger now and more plugged into shit than I did 10 years ago. 10 years ago or 13
Yeah.
when I was your age, I was like, fuck, I'm getting old, man. I'm
Well,
fucking
there's
I can't
always that
talk to
like
anyone.
weird thing too of like, if I would I have known what to do with it? Like, there's been a lot of times in my ambition that I've wanted something earlier than I would have been able to handle it. And now I'm just like, oh, like, I don't know. I just like bought a fucking building and I'm like, I would not have handled this at 22,
Totally.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
And it's like, I'm actually, talking about the prospects of your career. When I actually, when we get the thing that we're doing done, I think there are a lot of possibilities
I think
there.
people will be into that shit.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
But it's a weird thing where like for me, I'm actually like interested in just like insulating myself from like I'm interested in being untouchable, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, I'm married and I like own my own property, and it's like I'm like very interested in just being like, oh, like I can make anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's no like, because I'm like thinking about it in terms of if I made money off of music and I could feasibly do that, which has always been like a joke for someone who like makes the kind of stuff I make. But like, even if that were possible, if I could be prurient,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, he has the
It's
thing.
like,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. I would just do what I'm doing. Like I'm like, I've got what I need.
Yeah.
It's to me, it's like weird because it's just, you want to be able to be in that position where you place yourself. I just like where like you could just make the stuff.
Yes. Yes. Coming from a place of fullness, not the hungry ghost fucking MO. What is this? Oracle wants to know. I'm about to take a non-fungible. Oh no, no. Well, John Lamberton wants to know what's your take on the NFTs.
Me?
I mean, I've had them explained to me 8 fucking thousand times, and actually, please don't give your take, but don't explain them because I'm fucking tired. I'm
Yeah, of
tired.
course.
I don't. But what's your take though?
I mean, I think I don't know. The crypto stuff is funny for me. Um I think there's a lot of like first principle issues of people not really knowing how to question what they actually do with their time and energy. Instead, they're like, oh, like there could be a solution. And it's like, well, the solution's in your behavior. Um, it's not really going to be in this thing. I think NFTs have looked bad almost entirely. I know that they can look another way, but the market dictates what is actually worth anything. And the things that have become worth something in that space look like garbage. Um, it is not useful to me. I kind of land where Dean Kissick does, which is that most of the most interesting things that are possible with NFTs and blockchain are like contractual things. Maybe on some like gay, like Wu-Tang's record they sold to Shkreli type shit, where it's like, we're allowed to get this back or some stuff, whatever. But it's like, then that enters that dumbass conceptual art realm of just like, someone's going to do something cool contractually, and then like no one can ever do it again because like it's been done and it was interesting the once. I am I hate like a lot of shit though. Like I'm a big hater on like, I hate Bandcamp. I hate Bandcamp Fridays.
Why do you hate Bandcamp, man? Just
Because they're pretending to be your friend.
so you like you're
And they're like
just,
they're like literally like making it easier for you to waste your time.
well,
And
I guess it's like, right, it's like, why can't we just sell our fucking stuff right from our websites? Why can't people's behavior just be tweaked to like come
they
to
don't
my
actually
shit and buy it?
they don't care about proper discoverability. So like what is actually useful on a streaming platform, whether you like it or not, is that you are properly discoverable to some
Yes,
extent.
true.
Where like Bandcamp is just like a giant nepotism engine of a bunch of people who like, come over from Pitchfork or Tiny Mixtapes or whatever. That's fine, whatever. I don't really care, but it's like not, their journalistic quality is garbage. I think it's bad to pretend to be artists' friends, because once again, if I, as a friend to people, I would tell them to maybe save their money and not tour, or to admit that they're going to lose money and tour for their own.
Well, I think
like,
a lot of people do admit that. Oh man,
I just like, I don't think that's true. Like Bandcamp Fridays and everything else has been like 2 years of people being like, it's a really tough time, give me money. And it's like,
right,
oh great, there's a relegated day for like everyone to do this. And it's also like, I'm just like, I understand the Ulrich thing. Like I'm fine with the Lars Ulrich thing. I'm fine with that. But once again, you don't spend that much money on making your albums, and you should just like fucking make a physical thing and sell it to people. And if people want it, they should buy that. That's totally cool. I think streaming should be 100%. Like whenever anyone's like, oh, like the streamers, you don't get that much money per stream. How much should you fucking make? Like how much money? Like tell me what a stream should be worth.
Well, this
I
whole
think that I could
thing-
put on autoplay. I should get $1 every time. No, of course not. Most of the money is in being hosted by the platform. The platform hosts it, like actually takes all of the uptake charges or whatever. I don't really care. Like I think that it's more of just like, these are obfuscations to like a thing that's ultimately untrue, which is that you're never gonna like make real money off of this. And if you want to like make, in a generative sense, you have to like scheme other shit. You and I've talked about it before. I'm very good at scheming other shit.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, I don't want to me, the reason you make stuff isn't to be like, oh, I'm gonna, like, you're not gonna generatively hit. If you want to put time and care into like a physical object and sell it to someone, that's worth something, and that's always been worth something, and it's very Lindy. It's extremely Lindy.
Physical copies,
Just making physical copies of something. People like a tape, they like a CD, they like a record. Get rid of the record thing. The record thing used to make sense, and now it doesn't. It's 9 fucking months. It's a year. Who cares, man? Like CDs are back in. That's chill too. But like,
I actually have a Connect that can do like quick turnaround LPs if you want to know about. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But yeah.
But like it's a weird thing of like, I want to be in a position where I'm encouraging people to like make things fully and for the reasons that we originally said we wanted to make them, which is like to really, because like if we didn't, we might die.
Yeah.
And I can't, with a lot of this stuff where it's like you're kind of like climbing on heads to try and get at something that like still sounds compromised, still sounds like shitty, and like, you know, it still comes like people are thinking about their art cravenly or not. Like sometimes they're genuine, sometimes they're not, but they're like, what is my background here? How could I communicate? How could I be a self, like how could I tell some Jew jokes?
Right.
You know, it's like, this isn't right. Like you should be like, I made a record about being in love. And you know who can relate to that? Everybody.
Everyone. Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
It isn't, these are things for me where it's like, I can't conscionably. Spotify is good because it tells you like you're not making any money, yo. Like that's fine. That's cool. Like you should probably do something else. Bandcamp is like, Bandcamp literally takes so much money that they set aside a separate day to like gulag you into releasing your music on a single day.
It is weird why people can't just have like a generally accepted behavior that we like buy, even if it's not physical copies, that we just buy even just the digital shit directly from the artist. There's like no reason why you can't have your own.
But I think it's a race to the bottom with the digital shit, because I think we have to all just admit that like it's not worth anything. It's just not. Like it's not worth, like if you, but like I want you to think about it in terms of like your own, as a friend, you have friends that like show you something. I've shown you stuff before. You've been like, I have a hard time getting around to stuff my friends have put out or whatever else. And we would give you this stuff freely because once again, it's not worth anything. But like, if you had to pay like an album price, like $8 to get those files to hear it, you wouldn't do it. You just wouldn't. Like, not 8 fucking friends in a row. Like you just like on a Bandcamp Friday, you're telling me that like normal people who work an actual 9 to 5 are like on Bandcamp Friday, I'm going to buy 15 albums.
No, they
Like it
don't.
just doesn't
They
happen.
don't.
Like
This
it's
is
not.
true.
I actually would want people to hear the music.
Yeah.
You
People
know,
buy I mean, people buy digital of my stuff more than physical copies. That's been true. And I've been
I think that that's.
mostly just what were we going to say?
Oh, I think that that's. I mean, I just like personally, like I think that's bad. Like I think that
Right.
that's. I don't think you're bad for charging anyone, but I think about it in terms of like. I just think that there's not much to it. Like if you when you had a CD, when we're talking about having a CD of something, no matter what that price of it was, we burned it like fucking 100
That
times.
is true. Or
How
on
much
tape
was
and
like
shit.
that literal fucking price was divisible by how many times we heard each of those songs.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
yeah,
would
yeah.
be less than a stream pays.
Then a fucking yeah. Yeah.
It's just it doesn't, to me, it's not a viable model for getting this stuff done, especially because it reproduces this sort of like hustler's mindset,
Yeah.
which is around something that like I don't know, dude. I wish that everybody could make stuff, but I wish a lot more people would be quiet. Like I truly like I also like it. There's two things. Like I want you to make things from your heart, but I also want you to admit like when the things that you made for you are just for you and shouldn't have to compete. And then there should be other people who are like, I'm in the sport
Yes.
and I want to be better
Yeah, not like this
than My Chemical
diluted
Romance. I want to succeed
yeah.
at something, and not for like a few people over here, not for people who already know they're going to like my record when they buy it. I want to succeed at like getting hearts and minds that have never heard me
No, no,
before.
no, no. It's yeah, like because yeah, there's like instead of this sort of diluted middle ground where people are like being careerist and also trying to have integrity, but it's like neither and shit.
Yeah,
Like they're just not like
it just, I
yeah,
think it really hollows you out. Like as a seat to sit in, I think it's bad. Like I think it's bad mentally. I think it comes with a lot of. It just comes with artists so often are, because they're so full of like useless platitudes. They are microcosms for what is bad in the rest of society, which is like interpreting the indifference of others as malice.
right.
People aren't not paying attention to you because they hate you. It's because they have lives. And I can't, if you can't be arsed to like hear the other two My Chemical Romance records all the way through, how can we expect anyone to hear our albums,
No, I know.
let
Yeah.
alone pay for them?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, with your following or whatever else, you even have like, notice like you have people who are like into Z's or into Extra Life, and there's people who are into the other stuff, but you have a lot of people who are really into a thing at a very specific time
Yeah,
and
yeah,
are
yeah.
interested in having access to you now. And it's like, that's cool because like you should want to like straight up be like, I can outperform myself in that sense. I can do that again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
No, we
that
talked
is
about
like,
this a little bit, but we're keeping it under
no, but
wraps for now. But
I literally mean like you just Charlie Looker, whatever, in any sense, should be able to not relegated over here, not a certain kind of thing for a certain kind of person, not Psalm Zero, not like you should be able to get those same people again because there's thousands more of them that have never heard what you do.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's like that's the sport of it to me is like if you want to compete, you should. Other people shouldn't like sit around being like, I made a thing, it was good and cathartic for me. And why does no one listen to it? And why don't people want to buy it? And it's like because
Yeah.
there's a lot of shit, man.
There's an entitlement there, I think,
There's
with
just
people.
so much stuff. How could
And
you
delusion.
ever
Yeah.
I think the burden of proof is on you always for the value of what you do. And it should be such a miracle that anyone else cares. And you should be humbled by it. But you should work for someone to do that. Like it isn't to me like it is so weird to like do that thing of like I just, when someone's like, oh, I put so much time into this. And it's like, No one
Well,
asked.
yeah, that doesn't. Yeah. It's
No one asked you to. Like literally, that's the difference between employment and a hobby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. Senum's talking about the Flenser. That is a cool label with some good shit on it
What
for
about the
sure.
Flenser?
Senum is just saying, oh shit. Oh, okay. She's talking about. I probably should jet kind of soon. I've got
Okay.
shit. Oh my god. Yeah. Um, yeah. The Flenser is a good fucking label as far as. I'm a big Rec and Reference fan, or at least I was for the first couple. I haven't heard.
I like Indifference Rivers, Romance End, or whatever. That record's
Yeah.
really good too. I like them a lot. I saw them open up for Deaf Heaven years ago.
Yeah.
I like really dropped the ball on a show they were supposed to play in Richmond where I did not actually set them up a show, which made me feel bad. But it happens. I couldn't. I mean, when you played and stayed at my house, you didn't play at my house. We had neighbor trouble at my actual house. But no, I like the Flenser's good. They were just that person was saying that they've done KO Dot before, so they would probably do
possibly.
a record for you.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, we'll see. So like to wrap it up, just want to do a little plug. I mean, Xylon, your place, your venue, is it launched? Is it launched yet, or is it?
No, in a couple months, I'll be opening an artist salon in Greensboro, North Carolina, called Field Trip.
Check it out on tour, or if you're in Greensboro. Yeah.
I run a small podcast called Aim Low that all of the episodes are freely available on Patreon because I think you should hear it for free. And then where we talk about Spider-Mans and all sorts of other bullshit. And then, yeah, I mean, I make music occasionally. I guess don't just search my name. I record as Earnestness.
Yes.
That's the main thing.
And Perfect Law. I
have a label called Perfect Law Releases. Yeah. Charlie and I have some stuff that we're working on.
Yeah, we've got a little trio thing happening. Which can we say who's in it, or is that not?
Bradley Coy of Silk Defect. And
Bradley's been on the thing. Bradley's been on the live stream too.
Yeah.
He was just over here. He was just over here last week. Word. All right. Well, Xylon, thank you so much as always. And anyone who's watching this, I should have said this at the beginning, but the Discord server, hit me up on Twitter or on Instagram if anyone wants to be a member of the Last Things Discord. We're having great fun in there.
Nice.
And it's
awesome.
Good. Xylon's very, very active in there, keeping the flame happening. So word. All right.
Have a good night, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for everyone
night.
for stopping by. Peace. All right.